And welcome to this meeting of the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to inform those present that this meeting is being webcast live and will be capable of repeated viewing. Are there any? Oh, there are members in attendance as substitutes today, aren't there? So please introduce yourselves.
Councillor Earthy on behalf of Councillor Fishley.
Thank you.
Councillor Shanks for Councillor Pickett. Councillor Pickett has just been, there's a new post on this committee, so she's sorry not to be here. She obviously didn't know it was the first, as it was the first one.
Well, we're very pleased to have her back eventually. Okay. Councillor Lyons.
Yes, Councillor Lyons substituting for Councillor Meadows.
Right, thank you. Okay, so there are apologies from Councillor Goddard, and I believe that Doug Thompson is in attendance instead of Mary Davies online. Okay, he's not here yet, apparently. Do any members wish to declare any interest in matters relating to the committee or included on the agenda even? No, good. We have no part 2 items today, so the press and public won't be excluded. Next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. We have one set of minutes to approve today, which is from the meeting held on the 22nd of September, which was a bit of a marathon. Do members agree that these are an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you very much. So today we will be starting off with our city transport plan, where we are being asked to comment on the first draft following a period of public consultation that ended in September. The draft plan will be going to Cabinet for approval later in the year. Next, we'll be looking at the evolution of Pride in Kemp Town following the changes made to the location of the street party, how successful this was, and any learning to come out of it to inform future plans. Following that, we will hear about the Sports Facilities Investment Programme, which is a 10-year plan, and we are currently halfway through. This is a look to see the main achievements and what the priorities are moving forwards. Our last presentation will be about tree diseases in the city, how they're being managed, what emerging threats there are, and future plans to look after the city's trees. We will end with a look at the scoping report for the next task and finish group on heritage, which we hope to set up soon. In the interest of time, and this is especially important today after the long and difficult meeting that most of us were at last night. Can I please request that both those asking and answering questions are as brief and to the point as possible, as we want everyone who wishes to contribute to have the opportunity to do so. We also want the meeting not to overrun too much into the evening. I would personally really like it if we were all out of here within about 2 hours. So, 6:15 would be ideal, please. Please help me to make that happen, even though we've got a transport plan to discuss and Trevor in the room. So, thank you. Public involvement, there are no questions. Member involvement, there are no questions. So, we move straight on to our city transport plan 2035. And we are joined today by Councillor Newton with Kieran Taylor, Principal Transport Planner. Sorry. Oh, okay, just those two. And to present our city transport plan, Councillor Newton, would you like to present your slides?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for taking the time and interest in our city transport plan. I'm just briefly set up, so I'm ready. Won't be a moment. Sorry. Okay, so I believe there's some slides. Are they? Perfect, so thank you. What I'll do is give you an overview and step through the slides. Kieran's here, and I'm sure he certainly will be very much available to talk through some of the detail as well. I'm more than happy to take questions. If you're okay for me to do the presentation, but if you want to interject, understand that, to do come in if you need to. And I'll try and do it within a reasonable timeline as well, if that's okay. Do my best there. If you feel I'm going too long, do so. So I'll start, if that's okay. So Brighton and Hove City Council's our City Transport Plan 2035 is a bold and forward-thinking framework for transforming how people move around our city. Rooted in ambition and guided by clear vision, the plan sets out to create a cleaner, fairer and growing city supported by well-run council services. It's a plan that not only responds to today's challenges, but also embraces the opportunity for tomorrow. So I want to put it in the context of Brighton Hove's Council Plan 2023 to 27, as refreshed and debated last night, so 25 refresh, and sets out 4 key outcomes. And that's our council plan. And these are 4 outcomes: a city to be proud of, a fair and inclusive city, a healthy city that helps people thrive, and a responsive and well-run council with well-run services. So reflecting the council's plan outcomes, our City Transport Plan 2035 builds on 4 broad principles or pillars, I might call it, for a cleaner, fairer, growing city supported by well-run highways, transport and parking council services. So it's a vision for a thriving, sustainable, growing city. By 2035, Brighton and Hove, we want to see a place where active travel and public transport are preferred options to get around. Electric vehicles are the norm, supported by robust charging infrastructure, public charging infrastructure. Public transport is a safer, more inclusive and accessible to all. And transport services of the council and our partners, such as bus companies, etc., are reliable, efficient and well maintained. This transformation is underpinned by these 4 pillars. So the first pillar is a cleaner, healthier, sustainable transport system, significantly contributing to cleaner air, so low through to zero tailpipe emission vehicles, net zero in driving towards our net zero target as a city, and improved public health, which goes with particularly a cleaner public transport, active travel, and through use of good design becomes an attractive option, safer and accessible for all. The second broad pillar is a fairer, more equitable transport that works well for all, with transport system helping to tackle deep-seated inequalities in our city, aligns with and delivers our accessible city strategy, does not exclude based on income or ability, even as we move towards a low carbon transport options, and encourages more to consider healthy choices with a transport choice, within their transport choices. And the third pillar, transport system that enables a thriving, growing city aligned with our growth agenda, open for business, our important visitor economy, our nighttime economy, retail, leisure and cultural economy. Not just a city for residents, but for the region and beyond. So how does our city, a magnet for many, work not solely for its residents, or it's very, very important, it does work well for residents, but those people work and come here for leisure as well. And then the fourth pillar built within this plan is a transport network supported by well-run council services, so responsive, available and well-placed to serve. And I think that word serve is crucial. With inclusive parking services, responsive teams to promptly assess and fix, from a small scale to a large project, set up to serve a city, serve our residents, and do so as well as we can. So if we go to, I think, the next slide, I'll just check where we're on the slides, if that's okay. if I could click over, there we go, yeah. Just make sure I'm on the right page. So, I'm with you now. So if I flick through a bit more detail around the cleaner transport, so decisive shift towards the low and zero emission vehicles will well run with over certainly a move for a very high percentage of vehicles expected to go fully electric by 2035. The government projections are for the parity in price points by 2027. And we've also got clear targets for manufacturing for combustion-only cars and vans to cease by 2030, and for hybrids to cease by 2035. So we need to align with the change that's happening with nationally anyway, and this is the opportunity. So this is where our planning process sits well. And so our expansion of EV charge points. A couple of years ago, we commissioned the carbon pathway study and how to get to net zero as a city. And one of the things that study said, we need in the region of 10,000 charge points across the city, private and public. That's the challenge. And maybe at the time, we might get to 500, but we've actually gone really ambitious on that already. So really taken great strides. Now we're in partnership with delivery partners capable of getting delivering a commitment of some 7,500 public charging points additional to what our existing 500. So that's 6,000 lampposts, 1,000 fast charging, 100 rapid, and at least 4 ultra rapid charging hubs already planned for our city. So we want to become a beacon, not just on the south coast, but for the nations, to show what we can do with EV charging. And we also work very well with our investment already started in low emission buses. And we've got a Zebra 2 award. We're working with Brighton Hove buses to rebuild a Conway Street. Again, several routes already. By April, number 7 will be fully electric buses, double deckers on that. And by this time next year, we have the 6 and the 2 and part of the 5 with fully electric double deckers as well. It's very exciting. But this is the context of why we're going forward. And enhanced active travel infrastructure, including safe cycling routes and bike hire schemes and those electric options are higher as well. And the next thing to say is the fairer, more equitable city, a commitment to inclusive mobility, ensure transport is accessible for people with disability and those of low income. We don't want to exclude people based on this. This plan needs to consider that. Expansion of subsidised bus services in areas of risk of transport-related social exclusion. So the relationship between social deprivation and access to public transport is really something we need to tackle the deep inequalities in our city. Development of the neighbourhood mobility hubs to improve access to shared transport options, and also focus on improved road safety, building on our school streets and Safer Better Streets programmes to reduce risk of vulnerable users and to make it safer for everybody. And we also, that third pillar, going back to that point about the supporting growing city with strategic planning for mobility hubs, park and ride facility, and increased demand. To manage the increased demand is if we're growing, we want a visitor economy. We know we can't sustain everybody driving into the city centre. That's not a growing city, that's a congested city, and that's not the answer. So we need to manage that through and say, how do we grow as a city? And this is where the idea of a real push for park and ride, real push to think about public transport options and other routes, and also considerations of mass transport systems within this plan. And also integrate with housing and economic development, including links to the South Downs, use of technology and innovation, such as AI-driven traffic management, and working through that from the larger scale flow of traffic and signalling, to even sort of e-cargo bike hire and ability for smaller scale businesses to grow as well. And the capital programme aligned with national building priorities to deliver transformational infrastructure. And again, go back to the well-run council services, efficient management of roads, pavements, lightings and drainage. And so we need a responsive council, we need ability to residents to report and then us to act, assess and act and fix. Very, very important. And introduction of one of the things we're keen to progress with lane rental charges to reduce disruption for utilities, etc. So there's a lot to do, ongoing investment for maintenance and renewal programs to keep infrastructure safe and functional, transparent monitoring and performance indicators to track progress. So that's a lot of background. So I want to just really step into some key points. So this is where the slide comes in, so I've got a lot of background there. But so we set out a plan. And within this plan, adapting the plan to fill statutory requirements. So what's the plan's statutory requirements? Sets out a 10-year strategic vision. So it gets how to get in around a cleaner, fairer, growing city, which I've referenced. Sets out a pipeline of transport schemes to deliver this vision, and estimates of carbon emission reduction within our policies, so we can actually deliver on a cleaner city, a low carbon cleaner city. I think we'll probably go to the next slide, if that works. I think these slides have been circulated. You can look at that in detail. If we go to the next slide. So what we set out within our plan and within our consultation. Is that moved to the next slide? Don't know. That's it. So our plan consists of 5 challenges. So we set this out and we wanted to consult with residents, businesses and the wider community, partners and others. And the idea of setting out these 5 challenges was to be open about some of the challenges, but it will be open about whether other challenges as well. So the consultation was to invite people what they thought about these challenges and did they think there was other challenges in the mix, and we've captured some really good points there. So we set out these 5 broad challenges: enabling more people to live safer, healthier and more active life, improving the flow of traffic in our roads, supporting the transition to low and zero emission vehicles, creating a transport network that is more inclusive, and maintaining our roads and managing them as efficient as possible. And there's a lot of overlap between these challenges as well, but they're headings for us to pin the broad challenge for our city and to drive that forward and get the consultation going on that. And then clicking through that slide, you'll see we set 6 objectives within our plan. And they're broad objectives, they cover lots of things, and we also recognise there are other things which we invited the public to say, look, if you think there's something not within this, please feed those through, because we really wanted to capture as many viewpoints and reflections within our consultation process. So the first was increase public transport use, reduce the number of car journeys, essentially implicit within that, enable the uptake and use of low emission vehicles, deliver a safe, inclusive and integrated transport system, create a well-maintained streets and pavements, provide active travel choices to all, and excellent public spaces, so people feel safe and able to move actively, and included within that walking, cycling, wheeling, and more accessible crossings and other things for people. And it's not just the whole of their journey, maybe part of their journey is active. And promote the use of technology to reduce and manage travel. So if we go on to the next slide, we set out here we put some broad timelines. We obviously do have some ongoing delivery presently within our council plan. So we have the A23 active travel, which is coming together. Phase 1 and 2 has already been delivered. We have so phase 1A, phase 1B is already delivered. We have phase 2 and phase 3 in principle, when we think how we deliver that. We have bus lanes and Marine Parade and the 823 patch on BSIP, things that, again, something which we are delivering on. And then we also focused presently on bus stop accessibility and inclusion. And also, we've delivered on Red Routes on London Road and Lewis Road, and we've presented a Red Route strategy to Cabinet earlier this year. And we're delivering on the completion of the Valley Garden Scheme, that's phase 3, which is, again, presently under construction, will be finished by next summer. And sorry, we got a lot in that slide, I have to say. So we've got 29 low emission buses planned, the zero emission EV buses planned for this time next year, which is actually brilliant. And we do have funding for the Queen's Road 2010 safety improvements as well. So we've got a lot in the programme presently. And then we also have the 825 900 travel, which is really from Hove, Central Hove through to City Boundary West, consulted on this summer. We intend to deliver that. Massive expansion EV charge points and strategic mobility hubs are very much, we're starting to explore that. And then we go beyond this term into neighbourhood mobility hubs and major schemes, improving the city centre walkability, thinking about how our city centre feels and looks, and make it a safer place, and supporting active and inclusive travel, future active travel. And then we go further into that timeline, there's a strategic mobility hub delivery with connections there, and the Sussex Coast mass transport system. That's an aspirational idea at the moment, but it's something to go forward with. And there's an ongoing programme, and perhaps in some ways we want to open up that discussion around some of these ongoing aspects. But I think what I'm keen to do now is to step through the aspects from the if I go to the slide's called conclusions. That's the one. So it's really an overview of the consultations. We set out this plan. Oh, lost it. Yeah, that previous slide. Sorry. Okay, that's the one. So we set out this plan to the public. We launched the consultation on the 18th of June for initially a 6-week period, or 8-week period, apologies. And then we decided it was needed to extend that, so we ended up in a 12-week consultation process, in part because it was over the summer. We wanted to make sure as good engagement as we possibly could. We had over 500 survey responses on the Your Voice platform. That's the online platform, which was a healthy component. We had one week exhibition at Jubilee Library, which had a lot of drop-in people dropped into that and engaged with that. We also went to 7 drop-in sessions in 6 libraries across the city, and we had a destination experience group session, and also our teams went to 5 secondary schools and did workshops. So we're very, very keen to engage younger people within this. It's very much their future, as particularly for the city. So how's the perspective of the younger people in our city? But we're really keen to do that, and we also engaged with Possibility People, Get Involved Group, and other disability groups within this process. And as a result of that engagement, we were looking at some proposals to revise the plan a bit, so they reflecting on consultation feedback, and also we'll take comments from today's overview and scrutiny. We're very still open for this just to be a working document, to it to really be informed by the feedback we gain, and to make this the plan that really confidently we know can work for our city's future. So if I just close with the final slide there. So let's look at in terms of the challenges and objectives. You may see from here, those percentages are up there, that's handy. We had a very, in terms of the challenges, we had a very good response on most of the challenges, 86, 85%, 80% for the third challenge, for instance. And, even the 70s so good response to the challenges in terms of where people recognise that they're important. But in terms of the objectives, again, for the first 4 objectives, I think it was a very healthy response. And it's more the 50-50 gain on around responses we were getting in support of recognising those 2 other objectives as a priority for the city, but we can discuss and explore what that means in practice. So that's broadly the presentation, the overview, and setting out the vision of this. Because of the balance between those essentially 4 pillars, the ambition is to try and keep the balance as well. So maintain choice, enable growth, a cleaner and city, a fairer, equitable transport city, and a service that serves the city well. I wonder if we'll close it, and Kieran, do you want to perhaps put some final comment on those percentages? I'm not sure if I've done that justice, if that's reasonable. Thank you.
No, I think that summed it up pretty well. Obviously, the challenges are all broadly well supported, over 73% that we identified. On our objectives, 4, I would say, have starkly better support than the other 2. So when we produce this is just the headline information on what people have kind of like ticked yes or no to as to how much they support it. We're still going through the comments that people have given to try and understand the reasons why.
Thank you for that presentation. I had Councillor Fowler and Councillor Sykes indicate while the presentation was going on. I've got another forest of hands after that, but we'll go with Councillor Fowler and Councillor Sykes to start with.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. That's really great. I think you've done a lot for improving the transport system in our city. The buses, it's really amazing about all the new buses that have come along, like the X-buses. And I do have a slight problem in my ward where the buses aren't quite so regular. I mean, sometimes getting home is a challenge because, in the mornings when I leave home, I can look on the bus app and I know when to leave and we can get on the bus. But sometimes coming home, you get to the bus and the screens aren't working. I just wondered if you have any idea. I know it's the bus, whether you've had any news from the bus company when these are going to be fully up and working. Because some of the ones that are working are very pale as well. The other thing is it's great news about all the electric charging units on the lampposts. I've been driving around and seeing them in my electric car, and I've been trying to, in my ward, there's none. Actually, well, there are a few, but I haven't actually seen any close to where I live, and it would be great if we could have them in my ward, although it will be challenging to park by the lamppost. But if we've got lots of lampposts, there might be more chance to use a lamppost charging point. One other thing is on disability. I've had a resident contact me about dropped curbs. I think there's a challenge because the bus curbs are quite high, and then they want to cross the road. Sometimes there's not a drop curb for them to get across. And it would be great if there was more drop curbs in the city, especially for people with big wheelchairs trying to get into taxis. That's the problem my residents have. When she gets a taxi, she can't get in them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fowler, for those 3 broad concepts. It's very helpful to hear from more councillors and residents and where they feel the bus service is serving well and where it isn't. And I think what we do work in partnership, both with, I chair the enhanced bus partnership, which we work with all our bus operators. Our principal bus operator, Brighton Hove buses, they are very responsive to recognise where the needs are. They are a commercial company, they look for viability, but I do think that there is the examples that we've worked with them this year is the 3X. That was on the back of the 1X last year, and the reason that and that was in part, and that is in partnership. We had some BSIP funding to enable that to start. So the 1X we looked at a good route between Marlow, Portslade, all the way through to Marina, and notably stopping at the hospital on the way. And so people I met somebody in Marlow, for instance, gets into the hospital daily. Their partner, their husband was in hospital. They were going every day. And since 1X was launched, they saved 15 to 20 minutes per journey. So it opened up as much as 45 minutes of their day to spend with their partner and also have time at the rest of their life. So it's a real game changer, and people getting to work and back. It means actually a real opportunity. So there's 3X. We've just launched a couple of weeks ago. People are already saying this is making a big difference. Get across from Hangleton all the way to university. They think what they need to take the car, for instance, in those cases. And young people getting to school. It connects very well with Basvic and Kings and Neville Campus at Hove Park and West Blatchington and Backer as well. So there's a really good thing. But that was a completely new route. We hadn't had a brand new route at all for a very long time. But also the 23 we extended with Brighton Hove buses, with demand from the local community, a connection between Woodindean and Falmer. That's been resisted for years. We've got it going, and immediately that's already had a big response already. And so, but I hear your point in Hollingdean, where the buses have to go around a loop. I think that's the what you call it in your ward. They loop round, or the dip. I can't remember, but they go around there, and so because that route takes longer. It's not particularly a main route, but there's nothing to say we can't explore within this 10-year plan how to work to make our bus routes serve the city well. We've got a lot of historic bus routes, but does it serve well? And one of the things we're keen to do is to think about how to break down some of the inequality. So do buses give young people good access to school and education opportunities? Do the buses mean that somebody has a difference between depending on benefit and being able to get an income? We've got to think how to connect where work is with the bus route. Should we got nighttime economy? Do we need to strengthen our night buses, for instance? In terms of EVs, you're right. We've worked with the existing contract, about 500 blink charges around the city. But what we're keen to do with this next tranche is introduce some competition. So there's three providers, so Chargy, Blink, and Believe. And by doing three, we get more competitive rates. And also, we put out a tender for the lamppost charges. We said, I think it was 1,650 minimum. And we said within that contract, we want them in every community. So it didn't have, the communities didn't have typically driveways. So we don't want to exclude, we don't want to focus on particular areas where it's more likelihood that they're some middle class areas or whatever it is. So actually say every community, because every community is likely to transition. So there's no exclusion to that. So if somebody has a trade vehicle, the delivery vehicle, which has gone EV, which many main distributors now have, they don't want to have to drive to the depot every day. They want to plug in at home if they can, near their house. So we're very keen to make sure every community, and with charging, they came along and said, well, we don't want to put 1,650 charging points in, we want to put 6,000 in. And I was absolutely thought, this is fantastic, because it's about density. So if you see a lamppost, put a charging point in it. If you've got lots of lampposts in your street, that means there's lots of charging points. So the density makes a difference. And so absolutely, there will be charging points come to lampposts in Hollingdean very shortly as part of the Chargy contract. And sorry, what's the third point? What was that? Oh, drop curves. Yeah, sorry, drop curves coming in my mind. What we've done this year, we prioritised to do a review assessment of drop curves. Because, let's look at all of our drop curves. So that's one of the things we're looking at, surveying all our drop curves. And we found going forward, because we've got an accessible city strategy, we know that the pavement can be a barrier to somebody getting out of their home, getting to the bus stop, getting on our more accessible buses, and maybe we're calling for a lift or a cab. But actually, if they can get along the pavement, it could be absolutely the difference between mobility and not mobility around the city. And so we are surveying our drop curves across the city, and we're repairing them and enhancing them to make them more accessible. So this is one of our priorities, to making our pavements more accessible. Thank you.
When you was talking about Hollandine buses, you might not have the answer now, but maybe it's something you can take away for the future. We used to have the 50U, which was really quite popular. It was mainly for students to go to university, but it used to loop round the gyratory, round Sainsbury's, so people from Hollandine could go down to Lewis Road, Sainsbury's on the bus. I know it's not far, but we've got a lot of elderly that used to like it. So, we've been asking for a long time to get that reinstated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. I will certainly take that one away. And we need to look at some of the routes that perhaps were once there. We need to think, how do we, what's the value in having those routes? What's the reason why they were taken out? What's the value of perhaps considering bringing them back? How does it serve the community? And is it a supported bus service? Because we do have a supported contract with Compass buses. And so but that's again within our budgets, or not available budgets, as it were. So we need to look at how much this council can support services to provide perhaps some less viable routes.
Taken away in COVID, and then it never came back because they thought it wasn't needed because nobody was going to school or Sainsbury's.
Thank you. Ooh, sorry about that. And I'm sorry if I'm about to nag, but we are already nearly 45 minutes in, and we're still on the first item and actually the first question. So I'm going to go to Councillor Sykes.
Thank you very much. I'll try and be quick. With all respect to Councillor Mooton's formidable presentational skills, I think this is scrutiny, and we have to assume that the scrutiny happens when we read the papers prior to the meeting, and I think we have to assume that we've all read the papers. So I'll make that point first of all. I think it's a great plan. Thank you very much for it. I think, looking at the history of it, it's a continuity plan, cross administration, developed over years, and lots of agreement with what's gone before. Looking at 2021 at LTP5, so that's great. I have a question about this plan in relation to what's happening over the next couple of years. It says this is to be adopted by the mayoral authority, so this plan has influence over the future mayoral authority's plan. Clearly, there are major questions about what that's going to look like. It could be that half of this plan could be ditched. Has anyone seen Reform's transport policies recently? So there's a question about the work that's gone into this. For example, a lot of work's gone into strategic environmental assessment of this plan. I used to write those for a living. They generally cost about £50,000 if you get a consultant to do them. We have a strategic environmental assessment. So the one question is why? If this is just for influence of a future mayoral plan. And then another question that follows is, as we do have an SEA, why don't we adopt this now under this council so that it's a formal document, this council, and thereby has more influence over a future mayoral transport plan? So those are my strategic questions. I have one very specific question about the bus service improvement plan. Is there flexibility in the 9 million 25-26 BSIP for peripheral improvements alongside red routes?
Look, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sykes. Really good points. And so I think you put the nail on the head almost in exactly this is the intention by setting our stall out clearly, because we can do. We felt it's important to set our stall out as a progressive city and unitary authority. We've got a 10-year transport plan. We want to say, what is our ambition? What is our aim of this city? What do we want from a transport plan? And we set this out. We consult on it this summer. We say very clearly, a big stake in the ground. This is what this city is about. This is what we want from our city. And so we set out the stall, and we are going into a devolution, the Strategic Mayoral Authority. But it'd be very clear, as soon as that starts, that this is what we're about. They will have to produce a regional, Sussex-wide, including Brighton and Hove, transport plan. That will be one of the objectives of the Strategic Authority. But we anticipate that this will be a clearer presentation. And it isn't just a mayor and all the power, it's each of the entries will be formed with two representatives on the mayoral cabinet. And so there'll be a strong say. And actually, what I'm very keen, because I think we've achieved a lot in the city and we are absolutely ambitious to do more, we can be that bright light to say EVs, active travel, an excellent bus service, one of the best bus services outside London. I said it in yesterday's full council, spread the love. You know, this is a standard we want to see beyond our city boundary. Take the active travel beyond Portslade and connect that gold standard 8259 active travel route all the way to Shore and Worthing. Why not? And bus services, public transport, really good standard connectivity between our railways, our buses and cycle hires and park and ride. All these things come together. So I think rather than seeing this, the devolution Strategic Authority as some sort of repressive thing which is going to dampen down our ambition, actually we feed our ambition into this and it becomes that opportunity. So I'm an optimist of this one, and I do want to hold on to that. But yeah, the environmental, this year, I don't know, Kieran, do you want to come back on that environmental aspect? Or?
Yeah, so when we were launched on the document, it was on the assumption this was going to have the status of a local transport plan. Under the devolution bill, that formal status and statutory requirement for us to create a local transport plan goes up to the mayoral authority. But that's why we did a strategic environmental assessment. I think the fact that we've done the plan to that standard does stand us in good stead for saying this is a comprehensive document and well supported for, you know, what Brighton and Hove's asks are for the city when we're engaging with the regional transport authority.
Thank you. I've written down some of you already. I don't know what order the hands went up in. I think they all went up at the same moment. But I've written down Councillor Loughran, both Marks, Sue, Ivan and Julie in no particular order. So why don't we go to one of the Marks first? Councillor Earthy.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, just a couple of questions. First thing, I really do sincerely believe there are a lot of quick wins to be made in the smart traffic lights and the new technology. Firm believer in that. Certainly in one of the junctions where I live near Rottingdean, there's a problem with the lights in the underused green capacity because the light doesn't know that there's a blockage at the junction where that capacity cannot be used. And I'll take that offline with you, but it's the fact that a bus occupies 2 lanes rather than 1, and if 1 lane has to turn right and the bus doesn't want to, straight ahead traffic can't move because the bus can't get through. Anyway, that's the thing. So my main question for this is looking at the costings or cost allocation chart on page, whatever it is, 37, you've only allocated 150,000 to traffic signals. That to me is far too low given the amount of quick wins that we can have. So that's the first question. The other question is nothing to do with that. It's about X-buses. Would like to know how X-buses are actually sort of planned, because certainly in my case and some of my friends, a lot of our travel is now based around X-buses because they're there. It's not the other way around. You don't put the X-bus on and, you know, because in response to our demand comes along because, oh, I can travel a lot, you know, differently now. So I just wondered how we can engage with you and other passengers to say, if this X bus ran along this route, would you use it? So I hope that makes sense. I can take it offline with you.
So thank you, Councillor Earthy, and thank you, Chair. So rather than step into the whole technical points about puffins and pelican crossings and toucan crossings, as we touched on last night, which was very, very positive. But you're right. I heard that point. So we're doing trials along the Eastern Road Corridor. Sorry, we've already got two junctions with the intelligent connections between signals already in. We've got 4 more junctions as described last night where we're going to do those trials. And the reason for doing trials, we need confident the technology works for us, etc. But I'm absolutely sure we can then go forward with that. The idea of this is it connects with the need. So if there's a bus heading straight towards the crossing, it might wait for the bus to pass before the lights change for the pedestrians to cross, for instance. That's where the technology can be really used well, and there's something to do with that. So, and the other thing that I touched on in my presentation is I strongly believe design matters. It's not just putting in a scheme, but actually how do we design it so it works as well as it possibly can? And I think that work on the design, and there's a junction where the bus could work better, a left turn, right turn, etc. How do we work that through? I hear your point about the budgets. I think the 150k was making the budget work and add up. And I think, Kim, do you want to make a comment about that 150k? I mean, obviously with more money you could do more, but how we came about that number?
Yeah, all figures kind of are indicative at this stage. So what goes into our high level plan is kind of based on what we anticipate, kind of finger in the air, kind of receiving, but that gets confirmed annually and then gets confirmed in our capital transport budget, which I think comes around February to Cabinet to kind of be confirmed. So that's when the detail gets actually decided. Yeah, we can note your comment and take away. Thanks.
And at that point, the Budget Council is in February, and I think we brought to the LTP for this year through to March or April Cabinet. But yeah, to that point, if a priority is actually, can we put more money into there? You could mainly take something out, something else. It's still going to add up, but we do have that budget, the annual LTP budget works through. That sets out our delivery program for the coming year, for instance.
The
benefits,
going to come back over this way and go to Councillor Loughran.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Newton and officers for working so hard on the draft plan, which I think is very good. Just got a couple of comments. In relation to the vision, I just wanted to suggest that we have a further review of the interventions, which are in the table on page 99, with behaviour changes, because I feel that some of the plan isn't actually relating to the daily experience of residents, and we need to bring that up into policy. So in particular, we want to know how people perceive how they could get faster around the city on their journeys and how we can improve traffic on the roads. And, particularly cyclists and pedestrians, the less visible ones, because we can easily get the data from digital information on cars. So I'm thinking about the heat map that's been done that associates facilities with density of journeys, and whether we could have like a more in-depth study of that in terms of breaking down who wants to go where, how can they go, can they use walking and cycling, and in particular, how can we facilitate all that? So in my ward, which is Preston Park ward, we have difficulty with the east-west severance of the ward with the railway, and also that's combined with the topography. And in particular, children go from Prestonville up to the secondary schools in Surrendon, and that's a long journey for them. A lot of parents and children want to go by bike. A lot of children, I'm pleased to say, are being trained at the velodrome, Preston Park, indeed, to cycle, distances which can easily accommodate that. So what can we do to make it clearer that we've got proper cycling routes that are child friendly, and that we have, access ways for bikes? We don't have any metal tracks for bikes to go down, for example, at Lovers Walk, which is at least 50 steps up and down. I see cyclists, men, I have to say, I've very rarely seen a woman pick up a bike and go down those steps or up the steps. It's extremely difficult, and I can't personally do it. And all this would, of course, help with the reduction in carbon emissions and efficiency in journey time. So the next point I just want to go on to is about connectivity. I think many of our junctions in the city are very poorly designed, and they need addressing. So in particular, Dyke Road with Upper Drive, where I've seen accidents happen. I see a lot of impatient drivers trying to get through. Pedestrians have to wait a long time to be able to cross the road, and that affects the children at Cardinal Newman and Basvic, and also the children at Stanford, infants and juniors, and their carers. So, and that all feeds into the Safer, Better Streets programme. And we need to have, connectivity between all these links that affect the quality of people's journeys. And also the other issue that residents raise with me is that there is not adequate parking provision in relation to new development. And that is a communication problem by vendors and agents, probably, in terms of, purchaser expectations that they can park in a permit area, but then they can't get a permit, or it's hugely difficult for them to park within a 15, 20-minute walk from their house. So we need to have better comms around that, and also that can be linked into, but we've got this cycling provision, as we have improved wonderfully the cycling lanes on Preston Road. But then, of course, they will stop when you get to the Crown Lanka pub, and going north into Patcham, it's still very unsafe for cyclists going north, not going south, but going north, because we don't have a separate cycle lane, and that's a very fast road with lots of HGVs and coaches going along up to the A23. So could we have a bit more thought about that and reflected in the policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loughlin. I can only agree with you. One of the key things I mentioned on it is about design. Design really matters. And if we do poor design, or even lack of design in some cases, you end up with conflict in car drivers and cyclists, pedestrians, etc. And I think there's plenty of examples that show that good design, you don't even have to have that conflict. And in fact, there's areas, and we go to much of London, central London notably, with so many improvements on with cycle lanes, for instance. Many, you go back 10, 15 years, it was really hazardous to cycle around London. And there's parts of London now you can cycle, there's many more bicycles than there are anything else. People really choosing that. And so if you produce safer routes for cycling and walking, people feel safer and then choose that. So you've got to, I believe the carrot of that approach is you design well, you establish a good experience, a safe experience. People feel safe to encourage others, including their children, to go with them on a bike. It becomes an option. But I think I've done cycling around the city, including recently with bicycles, have gone around and shown me some of the challenges. And it's great to see new schemes being put in, so the Valley Gardens 1 and 2, for instance. But you get to the top of Valley Gardens cycle route, you end up with the Lewis Road Elm Grove Junction straight into it, and you go, "Oh, the connection isn't great," and also the cross connections into that route. So it's great to do the schemes. It's sometimes easy to get the funding for those larger schemes, but we've got to think how the connection of thinking of it. In terms of data, we do get data on cycle movements. So we've got cameras now available that can monitor cycle numbers and movements as well as cars. So that is worth noting. There's a lot of detail. I'm more than happy to take some of these points away from here as well. But I just want to concur with you that we do need to make cycling safer. We need to make driving safer as well. We shouldn't be in these conflicts, and that's where the design of junctions and curbing the speeds as well, encouraging drivers not to take risks as. And then, so to part of that and point. The answer is design and getting the right connections. In terms of parking policy, I think there's some work to do on this. So a lot of our new developments went forward with a car-free development or permit-free development, but and I can see the logic of that, encouraging people to come to the city and not have a car. It's a really lovely idea. But often some people move to these new developments and actually need a car for work or, not everyday life, but they might have their work situation requires them to have a vehicle, etc. And we go, well, how do we cater for those? Because they may not be eligible to have a permit. And I think we need to strategically think about how this works in practice. Because I think the aspiration of a car-free or permit-free development is a good one, but it's got to work for the communities that and then overflow areas, and then often at the edge of the permitted zone, we end up with a significant number of parked vehicles of residents that aren't living local to where they park their car. And I think we've got to think, and then you end up spreading of zones because there's more pressure for parking in those areas. So I think we need really think about, as we grow as a city, how we engage well. And I think with this integral approach to our city plan and our transport plan has to work together. So we grow developments, we grow in work, etc. We need to build up good connections so people feel confident if they don't routinely need a car. But we're also thinking about more car clubs, access to car clubs, EV car clubs as well, and car shares, and thinking about how to make it work for each community. So there is some more work to do on that, but this is all about the integration of these plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Strong.
Thanks. I will try to be. I promised I'd be brief in writing on social media, so I will. I'm just going to say thank you for putting my house on the back cover, by the way.
Oh.
So Centre and Queen's Park and my house right on the back cover. So I'm grateful for that. It's really good, and I think in general it's excellent. And what I've got is small details, but I think one of the things that's slightly worrying is that table you put about what people see as supporting objectives, the one at the bottom. It's more that people don't see tech as being supporting them rather than that tech won't work. It's that people don't believe it, I think. So I think it would be interesting to see where that came from. Maybe Kira can answer that. Just some concerns about some of the definitions. I mean, the low zero emission vehicles you're talking about doesn't include cycling. You're talking about motor vehicles that are low zero emission, and that misses out the council's excellent work you've been doing on freight and cargo bikes. So I think it'd be good to get that. And similarly, traffic legally means walking as well as cycling. And again, traffic here is imputed to be driving. So I think just some of those clarifications, I think these are sort of small definitions. And it refers to pedestrians rather than walking and wheeling, which is a more common. I mean, it does both, actually. It has pedestrians in some places, walking and wheeling. These are just editing things, but just some comments. But one of the things I did want to do is on page 12, you've got figure 12, which is about the inequity. Now, we had a long discussion, which I'm not going to rehash now, about parking, about inequity, but I'm pleased to see this figure in here because it sort of enhances what I said at that time. It'd be really good to see that that could be done locally, though, rather than nationally, if you could get the data locally. But it is about inequalities, what Councillor Fowler said about dropped curbs. It's about what the money's spent on. So you've got 900 million for EVs in the capital programme and only 200 million for dropped curbs for local pedestrian improvements. Whereas if you look at so that is, according to that table, that's 900 million for people on higher incomes and 200 million for people on lower incomes. So there's a slight conflict between the two aspirations there, which that table shows in there. And the final thing I've got to say is about co-design and collaboration. you had the cycle around with tricycles, which is great. But there isn't really a place, the transport and travel partnership is great, but it's strategic. There isn't really a place to have that level of detail. And the proposed city centre walkability scheme is really, it's excellent. It needs something like that. But again, if it's going to be an officer designed scheme that then just goes to consultation, it misses out a whole range of participation. And it'd be great to have a commitment to have some more, have a panel. I'm not saying it would be me, it'd be a panel of living streets and possibility people working with, like we've got the task and finish groups working with you on that to deliver it, rather than, rather than here is a thing, we like it, do you like it? And the final point I wanted to make, sorry, rushing through, is about the mayoral issues. I'm not as confident as you are about the interaction. The Bill Committee is literally going through Parliament at the moment. Sean Berry is actually on that Bill Committee, and it's going through Parliament literally at this very second in discussion. One of the things in that is a key route network, which is specified by the mayor, and bus routes, which the mayor will have control over. And in Cambridge and Peterborough, we've seen a mayor at odds with one of their county councils, where the mayor is using or is proposing to use their powers of control over the route network to basically stand in the way of what the county council there wants to do. So there is the possibility that there is that discrepancy at the highest strategic level where you could have that disagreement. And that is a worry, and there's no way of knowing how that bill will go and whether it'll change. But at the moment, there's no way of predicting that. So it'd be great to see how we can almost future-proof or protect the aspirations of the council in case there is something. I think Ollie said something similar. In case there's a mayor who might have slightly different perspectives. Thanks for rushing through everything.
Not at all. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, for a lot in those questions. I'm trying to go through as best I can. So I agree co-design is really important. And I've learned this from various schemes as well. If you get the community really on board with it, some of the fears or concerns about the changes made, we can work through those, and actually the co-design aspects means it actually turns out maybe a scheme that is enhancing that community. So it might move a crossing to fit a design line, for instance, which is the opportunity with some of these changes as well. So it's not so co-design engagement, really good engagement with the community can actually make a scheme into a positive enhancement. So the 8259 travel route, we've looked at that, looked at design roads, and what we've set out within that, it's not just a cycle lane, perhaps some people would say it's certainly not that. It's about how people move along that route, walk, cycle, wheel, cross the road, use the beach park, etc. And we can move the crossings to fit the sightlines, so people coming out the skate park, to just run straight across the road. We should put the crossing there, and then look at the crossings. Why don't put the bus stops next to the crossings? We can do all this, but that's a co-design, work with the community, and understand that their concerns. I want to check your premise about suggesting that EVs are somehow a more wealthy option. The EV price point parity is anticipated to get equal with non-EV by 2027, and the industry, the auto traders, even the second-hand market are saying this now. And there's a point at which actually the EV offer become a cheaper offer into car, particularly in terms of operational costs as well. And that's foreseeable. Certainly the market is gearing up for that scenario. So I don't fully agree it's for the wealthy. I think it's for a lot more people who will be using cars and vans in the future. But I do hear that point about cycling and walking. They are traffic as well, and I think it's so vital that we do consider that in our traffic modelling. And I think some of the regional models don't do that well, but I think when it comes to city context, we can model walking and cycling within it. And I think that's in some ways, Kieran, I think you've done the fit in this process, but if you feel there's more to do, we're happy to do that. I understand your reservations about the devolution and mayoral authority interact with the unitary authorities that we'll have. I think yeah, there's uncertainty within that equation. I'm not naive to that, but I do think we're a bold and progressive city. We've got a strong voice, and I think we'll be able to express that voice and go forward. And I think we'll be able to show that it matters to us within this region. And so, yeah, it's. And then I say it's not just the mayor; it's the mayoral cabinet, which have 2 representatives from each unitary, and we just got to go forward with a basis that each voice will be important. But I think it's potentially better than at the moment. I want to give one example. So Transport South East is a mechanism for communication between the different local authorities presently. And one thing that struck me within that is that so West Sussex might be developing a new housing area. But many of those people choosing to move to that new housing area might want to work or have a social life a day out in our city. But unless somebody thinks, well, how they didn't get here, they're probably going to end up driving here and affecting our ability to park, etc., and congestion. Why not think about connecting a public transport offer right from day one before that development is taken forward? And so that's what a mayoral authority can do. It's not just a disconnected process, but actually a strategic process. So I think we can do better within a mayoral street authority to make sure that our needs as a city are considered when development happens beyond our city boundary.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be really quick. So on the 30-minute presentation, you mentioned a lot about EVs and buses. Great, perfect. I'm sure all supportive of that. But bearing in mind, this is a vision for the next 10 years. So with the greatest respect, I'm a little bit underwhelmed because we are looking at a vision. Now, obviously, some of these things may not actually come to pass, but let's have that vision. So there was a throwaway mention about park and ride, which has been talked about for nearly all my life in this city, but that really needs to be, as part of an integrated parking scheme, it needs to be there, a proper park and ride. I know there was a trial early this year, but, it was a trial and it was what it was, but it needs to be a proper park and ride. There was one that throwaway line about Sussex Coast mass transport, and as part of a vision, again, that's been talked about over the years, but a mass transport tram or monorail along the seafront. I know the costs are going to be exorbitant, but we're talking about a vision here, and the plan surely is going to be more about than just putting EVs on lampposts and also, it's going to be more than that. And just bearing in mind, that the response from the public is people are looking for safer, healthier, more active lives. And I think if we can get more people across the city by using alternative transport to buses, yes, buses are a big part of it, but not everybody wants to get on a bus. Buses are a bit slow as well, and they don't necessarily go, all round. They're part of the solution, but they're not the solution. So I just think we need to be a little bit more bolder, rather than just having a plan to put in more EV charging points on lampposts, which with the greatest respect, all towns and cities are going to do within the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lyons. I'm not sure if you really captured the vision, to be fair. It is not a matter of just doing these one or two things. It's actually a city which is fairer, so we recognise we do have inequality. We really want to break down that inequality to make sure everybody has access to our transport system and able to use it. It's a cleaner transport system, so what measures do we do to make... We've got an air quality challenge in many areas of our city, 6 AQMAs. We've got to tackle air quality. Air quality and health are connected. We've got to sort this out. It's got to be a priority. So that is the ambition as well, is driving to a cleaner transport system and a growing city. We want to be an economic place where the city has jobs. It's a flourishing city. It's a vibrant city. And so these pillars I described are all part of the vision. And it isn't just a matter of putting one or two things in, but actually going, we can push these pillars, grow this city, that make it a fairer and more sustainable place to live. And the reason I think, yes, give people choices, but the bus system it needs to go where people want to go and take them at a reasonable direct ways as well. If we don't give them that choice, the default for many will be, we need a car to get around, and then the city grinds to a halt if not careful, and it has done so many times. You get congestion, and the ability for our city economy to grow is suppressed. And that's where getting people on buses, encouraging that, thinking about how it works well, is one way of doing that. A mass transport system enables and potentially unlocks that ability to grow. And so that's where the ambition is as well, is to say, and you know, what does that look like in practice? We've got a few years to think that through, but we're looking at what works elsewhere. So for instance, Coventry have come up with an innovative approach to trams, which is more affordable. You know, can we look at what works, what doesn't work? You know, some trams and light rail systems are proving more expensive, but there are models in this country that demonstrate we can achieve that. And I think if the ambition is taken forward to this city for the 2030s, which can grow, flourish, where people can breathe, and people aren't excluded as well. So I believe that's ambitious, because we've got some direction to go from where we are now, and it isn't about tinkering at the edges. This is ambitious change, and when it comes to EVs, we are leading light on this. So you're right, everybody will follow us, but we want to show the way.
It may be worth looking at Bilbao. I've just come back from a city similar size to Brighton and Hove, a similar population, and compact and by the coast. What they've done with their transport system is literally trams. It's trams, and it works. You know, literally everybody goes round by trams because they are going every 2 minutes. That very few people use cars or buses, and you know the roads are far more empty because nearly everybody gets around in trams. It's innovative. Okay, it's going to be expensive, but if we're looking at a vision, I think we need to be a bit more bolder than just looking at putting charging points on lampposts and buses. And they have a really, really good park and ride scheme. But I'll leave that with you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Lyons. I want to briefly mention that we are, what we did this summer is a park and ride, get it going, taste and see, and show there is a need. We know there's a need. What I didn't want to do is repeat the cycle of 3 to 5 years, the last 20 years, of evaluating options and not delivering. And we know we have to be ambitious. We need political will to drive that change. We absolutely have to get a park and ride up and running. It's a key to unlock many things of our city. But I do thank you for your suggestion, Bilbao, a car-free city. Interesting. I'll take that away, Councillor Lyons. Thank you.
Councillor Cattell.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very disappointed that we don't have jetpack parking spaces in the plan. So, you know, I'll let that one off with. Sorry, no, I was trying to be. I was being joking there, Trev. You know, we were all promised jetpacks in the 70s. Anyway, now, first of all, going down to the nitty-gritty, repairs to pavements and roads and so on, more about pavements, because one of the questions that, one of the councillor questions we didn't get round to last night was from Councillor Theobald, asking the question as to why the paving slab outside the town hall that she tripped over on the 3rd of August is still, and she's broken her wrist as well. I can't remember which one. I think it's left, and it's not been repaired. So how are we going to improve that that sort of service? Plus, also, I mean, Birgit's just walked out, but her trip and her broken wrist was caused by a road closure sign in the dark.
that had fallen over. So that's just 2 examples out of 54 councillors of accidents caused by pavements or stray bits of traffic stuff going around. So obviously I'd like to see that that the repairs reporting service is going to be a lot better, and and response, first of all. And the other thing I would like to talk about is electric cars, and why do they have to be so big? They are, most of them are so big, huge and wide. They don't fit into normal parking spaces. Now, we've changed, obviously we've changed parking arrangements in Norton Road. Now, on the ground floor, there's half of the bay is small, is the original size spaces. But I've not been able to get into 2 of those because of these huge, great big monsters either side. And there's one that parks regularly that is about this much over the forward end of the parking space. And I would like to see those single bays in every car park, sort of set aside for Fiestas and, other small cars like the one I drive. So, and I think that it's a real pain. And there are times when I've not been able to get into the car park. I've got a pass that I pay for, not the council, I pay for it. And I've had to pay for parking on the street, which I think is a bit much considering I pay for the permit. So, that's my gripe about EVs, which I think are generally a good idea, but why do they have to be so big? Can we not encourage people to buy smaller ones as well? Anyway, that's me. That was me.
So mindful of time as well. So, but Councillor Cattell, really, really good points. The EV size, that's mostly industry, but I believe that the industry's pitching up on manufacturing a whole range of car sizes within EV things. I don't know why particularly they're larger presently. Maybe it's attracting a certain market as they get going, but I think you will see smaller vehicles as well within the mix. But it's a good point, and car parking is valuable. In terms of, I mean, it's awful to hear Councillor Theobald's injury and others' injuries. I do believe that the paving outside Hove Town Hall, that one that stripped over, is now fixed. It was fixed last Friday, but yeah. So what we launched earlier this year is a refresh of our highways maintenance policy. But also, one of the things that I'm acutely aware of is that when people report a pothole or hazard on a pavement, it's not so easy to track it. See, well, has that been assessed, etc. So we do have criteria. Each report is assessed, and it's risk assessed by a highways engineer, and then they're based on the assessment of risk. Then it's built into our programme for repair where repair is needed. And that might be a 21-day notice or 48-hour response, whatever's needed in the context based on speed use, etc., and incidents. So, but there is, I think, I'm clearly of the view, and I think even officers may be of the view, we haven't had enough grant funding from government in late recent years. And so we actually have developed a backlog around the amount of repairs for our highways, resurfacing, pothole repairs and pavement repairs. It simply hasn't had enough injection of grant funding from central government for well over a decade. And that's starting to eat into our city. So it's not just our local authority. Across England, we're seeing this problem. The potholes seem to be everywhere, and it's our neighbours have this. Irrespective of political hue, it's been a problem. This government's come in, recognised that, put a lot more money into it. We're getting more money. I have to say the backlog is larger than the money that we're getting. So, we've still got some way to go, but with more, we can do more. And that's a motto I'm very, very keen on. I know our highways maintenance team, our contractor, they're saying, look, if you can get more money into the system, we will do more. It's clear I'm passionate about this. And we have a backlog. We've got a lot of pavements to repair. We've got a lot of roads to repair. We're getting onto the main routes first, and you will see that this summer and this autumn, you'll see us getting on and doing those repairs. But I'll take that away. We do need to make the reporting so people can track their report and see when it's fixed. Thank you.
And that obviously, again, going back, but Birgit was actually asked the room while we were discussing that, but perhaps she would like to report the things she fell over. I mean, I think there's obviously something incumbent on the contractors, whoever, to keep those things safe, because she tripped over a sign. Also, and I'll probably ask Kieran this, is it possible to put some sort of signage up in the car park over there to say that these spaces are for small cars only, or normal sized cars, as opposed to the monsters that, are out there?
I think that would be really hard to enforce practically. I mean, what other councils have done elsewhere to try and discourage larger vehicles, and I don't think it's specific to EVs. I think the trend is for larger vehicles across the board, basically. There is a surcharge on kind of like larger vehicles. I mean, it's a comment we can take away and look at and discuss with Trevor as to whether that is a thing that we would want to do and engage with our colleagues in the parking team.
Sorry. Now, I don't know how many people actually have a car parking permit for the Norton Road, but what would be good would be to make that car park, that permit part of the parking zone around here. So on the odd days that you can't park, you can in the car park, you can park on the street. I think that would be more fairer, because, if we've already paid for a permit, you don't have to end up paying, especially like today or yesterday, had I had to pay for God knows how much parking on street because the meeting went on till 11. I know it finishes 8, but you know what I mean? It's the same principle of paying twice. Thank you.
I'll briefly come back to you on that. So what we are looking at is where car parks have been slightly underutilised, and where we can use permitted zones, resident permits, to be able to overflow into car parks, because there's pressures on those permit zones. However, as an interesting point around that, but that could be two ways. So then if a resident's permits on this street, for instance, can't find a space, they might end up using the car parks. You may have less space in the car park. So we need to look at that. It's something I'll take away, but it's an interesting proposal.
Thank you. We still have 4 more names on the list on this first item. Councillor Winder.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk briefly about the air quality and health improvements, and whether that could be integrated into a live mapping process so that people can see the areas that have improved and the air quality has improved, because obviously there are some hot spots, and it would be quite nice for people to see live where things are improving right across the city, and that could kind of develop and grow in terms of the kind of data that people can access more generally. So I just wondered if those kind of health impacts could be focused on a bit more strongly. It is a visionary process that you're looking at developing. Maybe that could be more higher up the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winder, and I want to really highlight and echo that point. It's clear. I went to Sussex Air Partnership conference at Sussex University last Thursday it was, and I found it deeply insightful, and clearly medical professionals who are studying this, there's a relationship between air quality or poor air quality and health, a range of health conditions, and for good public health, yes, good to exercise and active travel, but actually one of the key things is actually a good quality of air. So it is really important we look at this. What we did do is we're data-driven administration. We want to be informed by the data. So one of the early priorities that we came in this administration is to set up, make sure we got a great network, an improving network on air quality monitoring. around the city. A lot of those are associated with our road network, and so we're able to monitor that. And we want to make that data publicly available. So we've put that onto a map. There's an app you can get, and it's publicly available. You can click on that. You can see what it looks like at real time. But you can always click on some of the data points and see the time series as well. And so in that principle of that, in principle, you should be able to see how that's improved over time. Some of those data points, those monitorings are only put in the last year, 18 months, a couple of years. So, but as time goes on, you'll see the time series around that. But yes, we absolutely want to see the improvements to air quality, and it starts with good quality data. Data is accessible. But I'll certainly take that away as well, seeing how those maps work in terms of seeing how this put it in our historical context and see how it's improved. But a lot of that data is available now. We can certainly show ways to make that accessible to everybody.
Could I just ask something very quick supplement? Because quite a lot of people, death rates are quite high in areas where air quality is poor. Will it be possible to gather that data and integrate that into the data that's available to people?
From the academic and medical experts that were presenting at last week's conference, it's very clear there is some strong data that connects air quality or the places where people live and work with their health outcomes. There's also other aspects, social, so areas of social deprivation, for instance, may be another factor. But in some of those cases, there might be because air quality is poor in some of those areas as well. And so there is a lot of academic research connecting, particularly with specific health or medical conditions, and building connecting the pattern or connecting the dots between a health condition, life expectancy and air quality. So there's a lot of really good research coming out of the NHS, Sussex University, Imperial College London, and many other places. We can maybe look at how that's mapped, working with our academic partners, say Sussex University and Brighton University and others, to maybe map that around the city to see how we can do that. And then we do have air quality management plan for the city. We have air quality action areas, AQMAs. We've got 6 of those, and a targeted approach. And we need to then drive the improvements to air quality with the expectation as we improve air quality, we improve health outcomes, and by perhaps the definition, life expectancy.
Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Thank you. I don't think I need necessarily answers to some of these points. I mean, it seems to be a bit of a contradiction to me that you talk about improving traffic flow, because actually the reason people often stop driving places because it's ridiculous to try and drive because it's too busy, like in London. So, I mean, in terms of the cars business, there is, I think Islington are talking about doing weights of cars, so charging on the parking on the street, not just about size, but actually the weight of the car, because those big SUVs are heavy. In terms of electric EVs, problem is the actual apps. I hate them, but you need to be able to just charge quickly with a credit card. I'm not sure if that's coming there. And if we want to, I mean, the trouble is the plan. Lots of talks like with cycling, what we've done, and we've got these lanes and we've done storage, but there are still a lot of people who would like cycling storage who don't have it and therefore don't cycle because they haven't got anywhere to put their bike. And also, certainly I do cycle, but I much prefer to cycle where it's a protected lane. My son lives in The Hague, so, I go and visit him. I cycle everywhere. When I'm here, I'm thinking about it a bit more because it doesn't feel so safe. And in terms of walking, I know those slips and trips weren't about ice, but in the winter, we're very keen on gritting our roads, but our pavements are awful. And I know there are a lot of people who just don't want to walk around. It's been icy. It's really taking, to walk to a bus stop is dangerous. I mean, in terms of data, do we have good data, for example, on, it says that bus journeys never really recovered. So do we know, for example, in cycling, do we know who cycles, what age, why hasn't the bus returned, who isn't getting the bus? Is it that people, aren't even going out? I mean, in terms of movements around the city, I just wonder where that sort of data, whether we have that, because that's what's interesting in a way, isn't it? If I want to go out, what makes me choose how I go out? And because a lot of trying to get people to do very short journeys, either walking, which is obviously a better way, or on bikes, is what you want to do. So how do you work out who's doing that? Kids being driven to school, for example, it's really ridiculous. Half the time to get there. Okay.
So thank you. So thank you, Councillor Shanks, for your range of questions, and I very appreciate that. So I wanted to address each one the best I can. So the weight is a factor, and I think we've got to balance this between encouraging people to really think about moving from combustion engines. We do have a problem with combustion engines in our city, and I think we've got to weigh up carefully what levers we have to encourage people to move to EVs. And if we counter that with discouragements, people may stay with a combustion engine, which has the implication on air quality. So I think it's a difficult thing to weigh up, but I do think it's important that we do get away from combustion engines as a priority, and the sooner we can do that, the better. We counter that with disincentives. It isn't. We won't necessarily get there so quickly. So I think that needs careful thing, because air quality and carbon neutrality are really important in this mix. Your point about apps, I hear that point. We do have some feedback about some people having some difficulty with the Blink app. We're working with them on that. The Chargy app is initial report saying it's slightly easier to use. People are finding that easier, but I hear that point. There may be some more work to do on that. Circle storage, we've got about 150 bike hangars in the city. We've got some of the areas of the city are very high demand for those, so the waiting list is very long. Not everywhere, but there are set parts of the city where we do need to perhaps review that and think about how we can fund bike hangars to make that more viable, what space and what implications that has. In terms of walking gritting, you're right. When sometimes the notice for an icy evening may be a short notice, and we do need to get out with gritters, etc. We can move quickly with vehicle gritters, and we do top up our grit bins. But it's often, we don't have necessarily the number of staff to get out there and grit every pavement. That's not something we're set up to do as a council, but we have grit bins, and we certainly encourage communities to use those grit bins. We do prioritise pavements around schools, GP surgeries, hospitals, and other community areas. But those grit bins are there for the local community to use in event for an icy pavement. And I hear those other points. I certainly welcome those comments, Councillor Shanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mackie.
Thank you, Chair. People will be pleased to know that most of the points that I wanted to raise have already been raised. So what I was going to say is a lot shorter. I really welcome this plan. It's the principles which underpin it, or your pillars, as you call, I think are excellent, and the process is really good in that you've identified the challenges and then come through with the objectives, and it's really good to see that inclusivity and accessibility are integral to two of those objectives. And quite often in plans or policy development, the needs of people with disabilities or older people are bolted on rather than integral. So that is really good to see. Brighton and Hove is a dementia and ageing friendly city. And for example, Brighton and Hove buses, all of the drivers have had dementia training, and the floors of the buses have been changed so that people with dementia don't think they're going to fall through a black hole. So that's an illustration of how we are actually looking at the needs of those groups. I'm interested that the data, I extrapolated from the data that 27% of people are unhappy with the quality of pavements. My inbox and my meeting with residents groups and the older people's council meetings would suggest otherwise. It's much higher than that. So I'd suggest that we looked at that again. Other things that are barriers for people getting out, apart from the quality of pavements, is pavement parking and street furniture on the pavements. So I've got some older people in Kemp Town are really nervous about going out because it means that they're having to walk on the road to get to where they want to go rather than on the pavements. That's an issue. And one thing that hasn't come up before, but is increasingly coming up within those groups, are the use of, or is the use of electric scooters, because they're on the pavements, they can't hear them coming up behind them because they are so quiet. And I think it would be good to think about a policy with regard to electric scooters in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackey. There's a lot in there as well, so thank you for your range of questions. I want to thank you for your comments and compliments, I guess, around inclusivity and the disability and elderly access. This is important, and I do think we got a pretty good bus company who's committed to try and improve the dementia-friendly, the wheelchair accessibility of the buses. But it's vital that we do look at how people connect from their front door to the bus stop and the bus stop itself getting onto the bus. Those things are often barriers to people with disability as well. And I hear that point that residents, it's much more than a quarter, as you describe. I've got dissatisfaction about the state of our pavements. I think there's within the lack of funding over the last decade or so from central government for highways maintenance. I think pavements have been very much a second thought as well, and I think that's why we got a real problem with many of our pavements. We've got tree roots, weeds, which we're trying to tackle. We are looking at this, and we have got an uplift in amount of money we have got for pavements this financial year. We're starting to tackle it. We're looking at innovative approaches to pavements as well, which we've tried on Norton Road and Portslade and Wishward over the summer, looking at how that works to make it more effective. But there's a lot more work to do. And so I hear that point. And in terms of pavement parking, I was at the patrol meeting in London this morning. That's parking and traffic regulations outside London adjudication committee. And I asked for an update as to where we are on pavement parking policy nationally. And it's my understanding from the patrol and from government that there's likely to be an announcement later this year or into the winter from the minister as to what policy is going to go forward, because we do need a clear direction from central government as to what the policy is for pavement parking, because a lot of it remains presently legal within the current arrangements, and you need to change it because parking on pavement causes damage, and then we end up with trip hazards on the pavement. So we need to start changing that. Street furniture is something we work with our licensing colleagues, and we do need to think about for some people that are particularly diminished eyesight, for instance, it generally is quite a hazard. An A board can become a trip hazard. So we need to work with our licensing colleagues on that, and I think there's some way to do within that. And the e-scooters presently illegal in this city on the public highway or on pavements. There's no ambiguity about that. They are illegal. What I'm bringing to Cabinet on Thursday is a proposal to go for a regulated government's trial apply for that, and to see whether we can make a safer way to these scooters to work. You did geofence, restrict the use, or to stop use on certain pavements, certainly on the promenade and other places of the city. Think about speed restrictions, make sure that each one's got a light, a front to back light, number plate, etc. So we can bring about a monitored scheme, and all other e-scooters will be still illegal in our city. And so we will be consulting on that proposal soon, public consultation and consulting with disability groups and others. And we recognise that the illegal use of e-scooting is quite a hazard for many in our city. We need to work with Sussex Police to prevent illegality of that nature.
Thank you. That sounds really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Mark, did you have something? You put your hand up again. Last question on this one.
It's a very quick question, and it was prompted by Councillor Gattell. Fix My Street, which is my society, runs a really good front end. It's much better front end than the council's front end for reporting street defects. Only 13 of the 400 plus councils in the country don't use it. Brighton Hove used to use it, and it's now one of the 14th that doesn't use it, which I think is a really retrograde step. And I don't know why, but it does exactly what Julie asked for. You can see things, you can see what other people have reported, you've got a map. The council's one is a form, it's much more unwieldy to use. Lots of councils use it as a white badge, they put the council logo on it. Why don't we just do the same thing? Why do we have to reinvent the wheel and invent our own form?
Well, thank you, Mark. I'd certainly say that point away, fix our streets. But one thing I do recognise is that our engagement via our form, as you described, there is a better way. It can be improved in itself. And we do want to invite and encourage residents across the city to say, look, if you see a fault in a road, a pothole or trip hazard, please report it. I think that's a priority. How that's done, I think what I'm keen to do, and I'm working with officers in our transport team and digital interface teams, etc., is to think about how, when you report something, we don't want to go to a black hole and go, well, I didn't hear anything back. We want to be able to ideally track it and see, has it been assessed by one of our highways engineers? What risk score has been placed upon it? When is it expected to be fixed if it requires fixing? And when is it fixed? That's the sort of tracking I'd love to be. So people can go, I wonder if somebody reported that. Well, actually, they can find out it's already been reported. And so it's not just a reporting tool that matters. And that's one of the things I think the council can offer. We do to improve upon it, but we can actually maybe see what actually happens once the report goes through and be able to track it through.
The street did all of that. It had a report back from officers. It said when it was. You could date it all. It did all of that. And the person who actually runs it lives in Queen's Park.
I will certainly take that away, Mark, and thanks for your recommendation.
And with that, I think you're off the hook, Trevor. So is the committee happy to note the report? Because we have been asked to note and make any comment. I think we've certainly done that. Happy to note, everyone?
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we are moving on to the next item, much later than we hoped, but still, everyone got to ask their questions. So we're moving on to the evolution of Pride in Kemp Town. We have Councillor Miller here to present this item with Ian Baird, Outdoor Events Development Manager, and have we got Howard Forbes over there? He was over there, wasn't he? Who meant to be Howard Barden, Head of Culture and Events, but he might have gone. Councillor Miller, would you like to start?
Yeah, so Brighton Hove Pride is really central to our identity, and it has evolved for many years, and it continues to evolve. Every 5 years, it's reviewed to ensure that we continue to represent the communities of our city well. There was a big change in 2025 to the Kemp Town Street Party, which was key to this year's review. And we will be outlining how the process has been carried out and what the outcomes were. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm assuming you have read all this. We will just pass through this. In fact, actually, we could probably go straight to slide, I'd say slide 4. Okay, and key to slide 4 was the perception of the street party and how it was viewed by people who lived in the area. And also, although the bottom line says that there was a desire to, this is written in the present tense, it actually was raised. These were concerns raised before this year's events. So the changes were to address these events. So if we could look, so as you can see, there's an overwhelming majority in the area for requesting change. These are the changes which were made. And if we could go, which I know we have presented this to you before, it was basically, we kept St. James's Street open to regular use. It allowed better access to LGBTQIA spaces and all other businesses. Business owners actually, I was addressed by one business owner who said it was a lifeline because actually they were able to get revenue from their regular trade indoors for that Pride weekend, but they were also given a share of the proceeds from the Pride Street Party on Marine Parade and did not have to contribute to the staffing costs. So there was, for many of the smaller LGBTQIA businesses in Kemp Town, this was actually a real benefit. Transport moved better. If we could go through to slide 6, please. So the outcomes, can't see those, can you? I want to address them. My eyesight isn't good enough to see that. I can either see my screen or I can see, yes. Okay, so, yes. So on the Saturday, we had to implement a road closure at 3 p.m., but the road remained safe and we were able to maintain a safe environment, and actually on the Sunday, no road closure was required. There were no major reports of ASB. And actually, one of the real benefits was a £10,000 reduction in the cost to environmental services. There was a significant reduction in public urination and other bodily processes. And basically, it was well received by residents. I visited the site myself both days, and there was a lot of positive feeling around it. And so there was the all-agency debrief has taken place, and there are some good actions which have been generated for future development, and we'll go into the planning for the 2026 event. And we are about to start meeting with residents and businesses later this month. All these processes, including today and the future meetings in the next couple of weeks, are going to be feeding into this process. So I'd like to stress that our main goal is that future changes continue to be resident, community, and business-led throughout the entire process. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add, Ian?
No, I think we did good questions.
Questions, please.
Thanks. Well, as you know, I've been to all the community meetings, and it's fair to say there's a lot of community angst locally. I mean, I'm going there with my community hat on, and I think bringing people on is going to be challenging. That there have been people who have been concerned. Hopefully, these figures will go some way to assuaging those fears. I'd be interested in having a bit more, some more data, I think, like policing, has the policing costs reduced, those sort of issues, hours of policing and so on. One of the biggest concerns was, we had that discussion, you're going to have to close the road anyway, and you did. So maybe, and one of the suggestions was maybe you should have just planned it and closed it and done it anyway rather than waiting for it to happen. So that's maybe something you can answer on anticipating it was going to happen maybe for next year and just thinking ahead to it. And I just wanted back to what we just had on the transport issue, actually. It's not a road closure. It's a closure to motor vehicles. People could still walk, and I'm not sure you could physically cycle through there. You certainly could walk through there. So it's not. So let's not describe it as a closure. Let's describe it as not letting motor vehicles through.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, point taken. You're quite right. And that was actually one of the things that was great to see, is that there were lots of people walking along the road and it was in great use. And actually, by being very, very determined with our messaging that the road was not going to be closed to vehicle traffic, it meant that it didn't become a party space. And it actually stayed a street, which was, it was actually what I would love it to be, just full of pedestrians, some people sitting tables and chairs on the pavement, people walking the pavement, people chatting in the middle of the road. But it was not a space for socializing, so it reduced things like urination. And I'll let Ian give you the data.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to reinforce that point, I think that what we had this year was we had to mark a real step change in what St James's Street was about. It had become known for good reason as being a real party street where you have large crowds, and one of the reasons that the fences that caused much of the consternation for residents were put in place was because we had uncontrolled large crowds in the road. So the reason behind making the point very clearly that this was business as usual and traffic would flow was to really mark that step change. And it was a really important step in getting that change in mentality. We put the preparations and we put all the equipment in place to ensure that we could safely close the road to motor vehicles and change that where it was necessary. And we're fairly sure that would be necessary, but it was really important that the messaging was that the road was back to business as usual. That now puts us in an interesting position going into 26. We now have to predict what the public reaction might be, and we need to plan accordingly because people will now be aware that there is a plan to close the road. So will they gather on the presumption that the road will be closed? We don't know. So that's what we've got to work towards. We haven't got any data on policing yet, and with this year it was policed with extra resource because it was an unknown. The big important piece of data will be next year when we move towards St James Street being a different thing and policing and resourcing appropriately. So in 2025 we had to resource for a number of unknown potential outcomes. Actually, the outcome was great. So now we can change that resource. So really, the data will be interesting in 26. There's not really a lot of useful data in 25 because we had to resource widely.
Thank you. Councillor Mackie.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it was a success in the end because it was quite quite an upheaval, really, and the community was really concerned about the change. So well done for ensuring that it became a success, Ian. Have you got a date for meeting with St James Business Alliance yet? Oh, sorry.
No. I believe there's a meeting in December that we're looking to get onto the agenda for. So I believe that's our plan. We hope to be on that December meeting. And yes, it comes back to Mark's morality. There was a lot of concern in the build-up, and quite rightly so. It's a big change, but I'm really pleased we were able to sort of stick to our guns on it, and actually, I think, set the path for a really good future.
Thank you. And the meeting with the residents is on the 27th. Yeah. How are the outcomes of those two meetings with those critical groups going to be disseminated and shared?
We've now got live and established our outdoor events portal on Your Voice. If anybody wants to talk to their residents who are interested in finding out more about events or want to pose questions or ideas to the events team, please do point them in that direction. We have a permanent home now on Your Voice. All meetings, including agendas and notes, will go out via that platform. All our public meetings, our community meetings, are now hosted by Councillor Miller. So if people leave their contact details at the meeting, they will get a copy of the notes directly afterwards sent via email. Wider dissemination, we're very happy for that then to be sent out. So if members of this committee or any other committee wish to share them on, we would welcome that.
And the outcome of those public meetings with the residents and with the St James Street Business Alliance, that the outcomes of that will inform the planning for 26. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Resident and community and business feedback is key to how next year's plans will be shaped. And so all that will be drawn together along with the outcomes of the review, the safety review, and working with Pride organisers. But it's a very comprehensive and quite iterative process as we gather data and feedback and understand how it was experienced and what the sort of aims and ambitions are.
Thank you. And lastly, we were planning on having family-friendly events on the Sunday with stalls and things for families to do and making it more of a family Sunday rather than a party Sunday. Is that in the embryonic stages of planning?
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of those meetings with residents and businesses because I think it's really important that we don't be seen to be making decisions now ahead of those meetings because absolutely, as we said, we want to make sure that the future shape is led by those meetings. That said, I think there really is space for that. And I think with the relook at St James Street and the potential for it being a closed to traffic space, in a more formal sense, there's a real opportunity for that to become a really friendly space. So I think there's still a place for the party within Marine Parade, but there's potential for some other spaces in and around Kemp Town at large. Again, this is my musings and shouldn't be seen as any direction until we spoke to the residents and really get a clear direction from them.
And although it wouldn't be formally part of Pride, it does also need to work with the Pride Community Foundation, with their aims, and also with Pride itself. So it's really important that this is it's a conversation. So it is not going to be a council decision. We are part of that conversation, and the feedback and officers will feed into any decisions that are made about what events are happening.
And lastly, we at one of the Pride planning meetings, we were talking about training for the security on diversity and LGBTQ+ issues. Did that take place?
In short, yes. There were quite detailed briefing documents that I asked specifically to see in advance of the event to make sure that they were suitable. The real difficulty is over Pride weekend is that there's a lot going on in the city. So we see increased use of our public spaces that have some security provision with it. And we see our business as usual hospitality businesses and clubs are very busy, so you see extra need for security staff in and around those. So a lot of the Brighton based or Brighton local security are sucked into that activity. We then put in on top of that a number of large events, so we do draw in quite a lot of security that are from outside of the area, and Pride is a very particular environment that some people aren't used to that find quite difficult. What we need to do is work with the industry to make sure that training is getting out further than what we do here in Brighton. We're great in Brighton. we could do better, but we're well ahead of the curve. But there's large parts of the country where that sort of training isn't embedded in what is needed to get an SIA license in general terms. So what we need to do is continue to work with the wider security industry. I've been talking with the chair of the UK CMA, which is the UK Crowd Management Association, about what work they're doing along this line. We also this year have worked really closely with the SIA, which is the Security Industry Association. We invited them down to 3 different events over the course of the year to do some spot checks to make sure people who are license holders are up to date with the training they should have. But we are opening conversation with them saying, how can we make sure that this kind of training is embedded in what it means to get an SIA license? Because I think we need to be part of driving the national trend in making the security industry more responsive to these communities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, I don't see any other hands, and I'll just, before I ask the committee if they're happy to note the report, I'll just say that as a former councillor for the area, I was also one of the doubters, as I think both Birgit and Ian are aware. But well done, because it really seems to have gone brilliantly. So thank you very much. So we are just asked to note the report, I think. So are you happy to do so? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so speeding up a little bit now, we are moving on to, finally, Alan, the first of your 2, the Sports Facilities Investment Programme. Okay, sorry, Alan, we've had a request for a 2-minute comfort break. Let's call it literally Are we Sports Facilities Investment Plan? Councillor Robbins to introduce the item, and we also have two people, Kerry Taylor,
And Mike Harris.
and Mike Harris. Sorry. Welcome, and Alan, take it away.
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Here we go. This report is to the overview and scrutiny was requested to share the update with members on the progress made in the future priorities of the Sports Facilities Investment Plan, the SFIP, which was introduced in 2021. The report is for noting. The associated presentation highlights what has been delivered so far, as it is almost halfway through the 10-year plan and the priorities are moving forward. The SFIP acknowledged that the public sports centres and swimming pools in the city were showing their age, and we needed good quality, accessible, sustainable facilities which can better serve the local residents. Although the analysis, review and consultation process undertaken, a long-term strategy vision was recommended for the city to provide a range of opportunities for the development options, specifically the creation of 3 large hubs facilities to serve the city. The West Hub, a replacement for the King Alfred Leisure Centre, North Hub, increasing provisions at Withdean Sports Complex, and the Eastern Hub, to be decided. Currently, we're looking at the Regent Swimming Pool Complex, but we're going to have a good look round to see where we can fit something decent in the east. These larger hubs will enable investment and be supplemented by the smaller networks and locally accessible community leisure facilities supporting the needs of local residents. Despite being a small team, you're pretty much looking at them here, a significant number of projects have been delivered or have been progressed across the city, and I'm pleased to be able to show you a broad range of projects to be delivered. There are a number of key priorities projects moving forward, including current live products such as the procurement for the new leisure centre operator, the swimming pool at Withdean, and the development of the new King Alfred Leisure Centre, along with starting feasible work on the proposed Eastern Hub. So that's where we are at the moment. We can run through the slides if you like, or we can just assume that you've all read them and move on to questions. There is one thing that I'd like to say, and that is really the team that we've got. If you consider this as a 10-year plan, we're 5 years into it, and we're pretty much on schedule. I think that's a pretty good achievement in itself. I mean, we could well be saying here, well, look, we've done the best we can. We're 2 or 3 years behind, but so I think in a 10-year plan, to be 5 years into that and to be able to say we're on schedule is pretty good. But we can take all the slides as read. Anybody got any questions, we can hop to that slide and have a look at it. But let's get cracking, shall we?
Thank you, Alan. Any questions? Councillor Shanks.
All right.
Thank you, Alan. Just in terms of how we actually deliver things, because recently, for various reasons, I was involved in town hamlets. They've just taken all their leisure centres back under their own council, running them themselves instead of outside procurement. And I think, oh, sorry, I'm looking at them at the same time. I moved my mic. So I just wonder, because constantly we always go, oh, we have to outsource things. And I know what you're going to reply to this, but I do think we do seriously need to look at what we can run ourselves. If you go down to Hove Beach Park at the moment, because I live quite near there, it's absolutely rammed. That game for paddle is open from 8. I mean, they charge £36 an hour. They must be making a fortune out of that. So I just, for me, it seems like this is one way that the council could be making money out of things instead of giving it to private operators, Yellow Wave the same, to make, a lot of money out of what is basically council land and could have been run by the council. And I know that we had problems in the past with that, but I just think it really should be looked at when you're looking, at the next plan or at this progress thing.
I think there's one thing that we always, and I get told off for banging on about this sometimes, but the one thing we have to realise is that it's easy to think that we pay someone to look after our leisure facilities. We don't. They pay us. We receive money for them to run our leisure centres. So it's important to remember that before we think about taking them in-house. And I do appreciate what you're saying. Paddle is at the moment got a life of its own, but there is a worry, not a worry, but there's a concern that might alter over the course of time, and that we could be at the moment the paddle people are taking all the risk. I mean, next year paddle may not be the big thing that it is this year, and then we would be left with perhaps a lot of paddle courts that we couldn't get rid of. So it is a big thing, and it's been a bit of a discussion within the team and within with all of us as to how much do we ride that sort of wave and how much do we show caution about it. But there are a lot of pickleball's another thing. Pickleball could be the thing that takes over from paddle. We don't know. But anyway, there we are. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, in terms of the SFIT, we've obviously got the 7 sites which are managed by Freedom Leisure, a not-for-profit trust. A separate tranche of work, as Alan referenced, is the new leisure management contract that we'll be going out for, and that's been agreed to be externalised. So we'll be starting the procurement for that in November. In terms of other facilities like Hove Beach Park and other facilities within parks, we do look at that on a case-by-case basis. So if there is any opportunity for us to deliver a paddle facility within a park that we can operate ourselves, we will look at it.
Many that we're running ourselves at the moment. I mean, we've got all the tennis courts have gone out, most of them have gone out, haven't they?
Yeah, there's a few tennis courts that are still operated by us within the Parks and Leisure team.
And I think most of the tennis courts are actually CICs. They're community-run clubs rather than privately.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes.
I actually had a very similar question, so I'm not going to repeat it. Just thanks very much for the plan. It's great.
In which case, I'll go to Mark.
Thanks. Yeah, I can see one of those CIC tennis clubs from my bedroom window in Queen's Park. The 3 big ones, but the east one is the centre one, and some of the smaller ones, like St Luke's and Stanley Deason, are more in the east than the central one. So I'm just, and obviously Prince Regent is only a swimming pool and not a leisure centre. So it just seems to be sort of biased against the eastern side of things. And one of the particular, going back to the local transport plan that we talked of, I think the figure in here is 53% visit by walking, cycling or using public transport, which is obviously below the aspirations that Trevor had for people using those modes. So can we get the 2 plans working together with the LTP and see, because obviously by having having bigger hubs, people have to travel longer to get to them. Having more smaller ones, people are nearer them, and so it's easier to get to.
I think I've perhaps misled you slightly there. We're not saying that we're looking at Prince Regent as the eastern hub. We are going to search for a more eastern hub, possibly Moulscombe, Whitehall, Kemptown, that way. But that's an ongoing aspiration for the future. That we certainly don't look upon the Prince Regent as our eastern hub. We'd be looking further east than that, and there are possibilities, as I say, in Moulscombe, Whitehall, and that sort of eastern end of Brighton, and that's really where we would be aiming. I don't know if Kerry wants to come in about the cycling or Mike, because they may know more.
In terms of motor transport, we'll obviously work with our leisure management contractor to look at green ways of travel, and we'll also link with the team in terms of any opportunities. We are looking at whether or not we can put in things like electric bike charging and that sort of thing at all the sites. And obviously with the King Alfred, there'll be a completely new travel plan. And I know there's discussions with the bus company and that sort of thing. And I'd probably just draw your eyes to, I guess it's the second slide where it's got the demarcation of the west, the north and the east. So you can see how big the east is and how we need to look at all of those various wards to see how we could put a new east hub somewhere within that area.
Thank you. Councillor Cattell.
Thank you, Chair. This is more of a comment than a question. First of all, I'd just like to say that I'm really impressed at the progress that's been made on this. And I know that officers have been working hard on this for a long time. And Alan, you know, you've taken up the reins with it really well, I think. Obviously, we do need to get a lot more stuff going on in the Eastern Hub because that's where our poorest communities are. I really look forward to seeing those things come on stream. And also very much looking forward to King Alfred, which I know we've got, you know, is I'm not quite sure where we are yet with the planning application, but we've got a presentation on it in a couple of weeks. So just like to sort of say hurrah for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Julie. And I'd like to put on record what a big help Julie's been, Councillor Cattell, in bringing this forward. But and by that I'm talking about the King Alfred. You know, it's been a real pleasure working with them. Thanks.
Councillor Leffler.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for the report. I think it's really useful and residents are indeed raising the number of planning consents that have been given for the expansion of sports facilities. So I just want to turn to within community pool. One of the residents has asked me if there are any windows in the development because on this image it looks like there's a blank facade.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some windows. So I think these plans were probably the indicative plans that we had before we did a consultation with the local community. And some of the feedback was that people wanted to see more natural light into the new hall. So as you come through, there is a foyer area and a transition area that you come through that will all be lit. And then within the swimming pool area itself, there is some glazing now, some vertical glazing that's frosted at the bottom so people can't see in, but then light at the top so you can see the trees and you'll still get light coming into the pool hall.
Okay, that's great because it really does enhance the experience of swimming when you see nature around you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do believe that that is the end of the questions. So we are asked with this one to note the report. Are members happy to do so? Agreed. Thank you. But we'll keep two of these people, I think, at the table. Thank you very much. So we are moving on to tree diseases. So we'll welcome Alan back, not that he went anywhere in between. Do we have Peter Small as well?
No, apologies. Yeah, Peter's.
That's all right, just Mike again. So Head of Parks and Leisure. So Alan, would you like to give us this report outline?
Yes, I certainly will. And it's a great shame that Peter isn't here because Peter is the expert on trees and really does know his stuff. Not that Mike doesn't, but if there's anything that is too technical for us, then we'll make a note and come back to it to answer when Peter's available. So this report to the Place Overview and Scrutiny was requested to share an update with members on the work currently undertaken to address the impact of tree diseases present within the city, which affect the council's tree population. The report is for noting. The presentation highlights the work dealing with tree diseases is focused via the council's arboricultural team, who sit within the City Parks Department. With high-profile tree removal works occurring with regularity due to the impact of pests on the Brighton and Hove trees, this report seeks to provide an overview of why this is needed, what these works relate to, and other measures for the arboricultural team take to combat threats of this nature. Most significantly, both elm disease and ash disease are present in Brighton and Hove, and both ultimately result in tree decline and death. All the work associated in tackling elm disease is to contain the rapid spread and prevent much larger amounts of tree death, and removed citywide. We have over 3,000 elm trees on our streets alone. Elm disease has been present in Brighton and Hove for many decades, and an intense annual control programme has existed throughout to prevent the rapid and large-scale tree canopy loss. Up to a third of the Brighton and Hove canopy cover is elm, and the impact of that environmentally and financially. Ash dieback cannot be contained, and the works needed are due to public safety concerns, with large numbers of infected ash within the city's woodlands becoming fragile and prone to failure as disease gradually shuts affected trees down year on year. This is an ongoing programme addressing woodland areas based on risk and disease levels, but also managing the regeneration plans for these areas and the messaging to residents, to concerns of community groups. Alongside these two key programmes, the tree disease work, this update highlights the pest and disease which impact the council's urban tree stock now, and those likely in the near future, such as oak processionary moth. The growing trend in global tree diseases spreading quickly around the world is a concern to all UK local authorities managing large tree populations. Biosecurity measures, development of current disease control response, and a longer-term strategy vision will be important elements, and an overarching tree strategy for Brighton and Hove City Council, which this update identifies as a document to be proceeded in due course for consideration and approval. Again, we have slides which, if anybody particularly wants us to show, we can run through them, but if not, we can take them as read, whichever you want to do. I think Councillor Sykes has indicated, so presumably, I'm doing your job for you, Chair. I'll shut up.
Thanks, Alan. I think we'll go straight to questions, won't we? I've got Councillor Fowler, and then I've got Councillor Shanks and Mark Strong, and Councillor. Can we go to Councillor Sykes first? Sorry, Teresa, because he's got to go.
Yeah, apologies. Just it's a quick one. Two things. One is that a couple of years ago, there was sort of a major issue with the elm disease business. I think a school somewhere cut down an elm tree and just left the logs in a pile somewhere, and that's felt to have contributed to the problem we have now. And I just wondered if we have any sanction on private entities that do that sort of stuff. The second is, are we planning in our tree replanting scheme to replace traditional native trees with trees which might be able to deal with sort of future climate change, given they're going to be there for decades? Are we sort of planning for the future in terms of the species that we're planting?
Yes, thank you. So tree planting elements, yes, we will do a common phrase, the right tree, right place. Those species will be dictated either what's existing to keep the street scene, or what tree planting officer associates that might be needed within that area. I need to get confirmed with Peter Small, our manager. I don't think there is any sanctions we can put in place for private residents for storing logs, but it does cause a problem.
Thank you. Sorry, Teresa. I'll go to you next. Councillor Fowler.
I mean, as you know, we had a really devastating loss in my ward. I think in two areas in my ward where the trees were absolutely had to be taken down. I appreciate that this really had to be done because, I mean, I think I've read over the summer of 2 people died from branches falling on them when they were out walking their dogs. I think even a child died of a branch falling somewhere. It was in a park, and I don't know whether that was down to trees breaking and not being checked or what. But I remember reading and thinking, oh, that could have happened in our woods if we hadn't taken I know it was awful, but if we hadn't done what we had to do. So I just, let's get over that. But now I want to know is when are we going to be doing the replanting in Hollandbury and Bursted Woods there? And I know the paths I think are being done now. So when are we going to do the replanting? And what type of tree? Like it was similar to what Councillor Sykes said. Are we going to be doing fast-growing trees, or what sort of trees are going to go back into those woods?
I can answer quickly, and then I'll pass you over to Mike, because we do now have this woodland advisory group that is cross-party, and we have groups from the community, such as Hollandbury Woods and various places there. And what we found talking to them is that some of them are even saying, you know, it looked devastating when all those trees were lost, and it was big holes, and it looked awful. But now we're seeing that the sun creeps in, and we're getting bluebells in the spring, and we're getting primroses coming in these little copses, and there's places to sit, and there's, you know. So I think there is a big job to decide how we replant, and not just a case of, you know, we've lost 40 trees, so we're going to put 40 new trees in. It's really looking to design, and some of the groups are coming forward with really good ideas, and they're saying to us that you know, that's one. But I'll pass you over to Mike, who can perhaps tell you about timing.
Just on the tree planting element, we're bringing forward a tree planting plan for this year. That will involve street trees, park trees, and areas of woodlands. I think stamina has been identified where we've done a lot of ash dieback felling to replant. And then each year we'll bring forward proposals for planting where we can, as and when funding permits.
It's great about the little areas with bluebells, because that's just as important to get the, you know, the bugs, the butterflies, and I think the butterfly area. So that's another thing that I wanted to say about the trees. What would have helped if we'd have had more contact? So what was missed last time? Maybe if you could have more contact and have meetings with the friends of. So we've got Friends of Bursted Woods, we've got Hollandbury, Growing Hollandine, that had some trees. They got chopped down on a path, which they look after, but the people that cut them down didn't realise that they were trying to clear the path, but didn't realise that they were looked after by Growing Hollandine. So there's all this, you know, no contact. So could we have more contact with the friends groups of what's going on and how to replant? Thank you. And where?
Yeah, thank you for that. We do have our tree manager and our tree team. What we try to do each time we have any felling is we liaise with the Friends of groups as well as the ward members and Alan to make them aware that this is happening. Sometimes it has to be reactive and quite short notice, but anytime we have that initial element of where we know we can contact people, we do. In addition to that, as Councillor Robbins mentioned, we have the Woodland Advisory Group where we're starting to push that communications out as well. So hopefully the communications, particularly to the Friends of Group, will be in constant contact as and when we do those things, whether it be tree felling or tree planting.
Councillor Shanks.
Sorry, I put the goes on a minute. Yeah, and on that last point, that doesn't really happen. I mean, we just had in the street that I live in Hove, but also, you know, back in the day, residents, they just need to know why. You know, they're going, why is this tree coming down? They just need to know why. And we've had that in the past with when we did, I think it's Millers Road. You know, just either putting things through people's doors or even a notice on the trees, you know, this is why this is happening, because people then contact their ward councillors and say, oh, why are you cutting our trees down? And I'm not so sure about ash dieback. I think there's a bit more there's a bit more dispute about whether that's, you know, always needed. But certainly with the elms, we've had to do that in the past. But you know, you take a tree out, it's outside their house. They've lived with it for years. So better comms is my view, and it doesn't have to be that. I mean, no, most streets have got WhatsApp groups now. So if you stick a notice on a tree, everybody will go, oh, you see what's happening to our tree, and then they'll know.
Yeah, just again on that, certainly since I've been here in April, we've made sure that if there's a street tree, a sign's put up on the street tree, and ward members are updated as well. And the default position for our staff is to make sure that we update friends of groups if it's in a friends of group area as well. And that's certainly something I'll take forward to make sure it happens.
Thank you. Mark.
Thanks. Just a couple of things. On Community Works, we have a rep for environmental climate issues, and they asked to be kept informed. And we also have the friends groups. So I think, we could do a lot more to help spread those words with those friends groups. So I think, I always make this offer, but we do have access to groups that could help some of that work. On the substantive issue, I'm surprised to see that the report you said didn't actually mention climate change. I didn't see the words mentioned anywhere. I'm just looking, there's a report here saying the ash dieback is equivalent to, I think, all the cars in Scotland. The amount of CO2 that won't be captured by the trees is about to all the cars in Scotland driving. So there's a huge amount of loss. So if we can relate that to the net zero, the carbon work that the council's doing, and think about replanting, and you mentioned about the appropriate species, but also the carbon saving, and also the cooling effect of trees as well. That doesn't seem to be factored. Well, maybe it is factored, but it's not mentioned in here about the work you can do in future. And again, Les, my colleague, would be keen to work on that.
I'm not sure that we have now got some funding for replanting trees. I'm not sure when the report was written whether that funding would have been in place. So that's possibly why it's not been in there. The one thing I'll say is that we can plant trees fairly easily in parks and woodland, which don't, are relatively cheap to do, relatively easy to do. The street trees are much more difficult to replace because they cost a lot of money to replace. We're looking at having to, if there's a stump there, we have to drill that stump out, we have to make good the road, we have to put in the tree, we have to do everything else. So the street trees are a bigger problem than the woodland trees, but we're working on both. And I think Councillor Fowler mentioned with the ash dieback. I appreciate what Sue's saying, that there might be other ways of dealing with it. It might be that you let it try to regenerate itself. It might be that, but I'd find it much easier to try and defend cutting down elm trees than standing here trying to defend the fact that we didn't cut them down. And as Councillor Fowler said, a large branch fell on somebody and hurt them. So I think that speaks for itself. But I think you want to come back, and I don't know if Mike wants to.
I wanted to say one thing. Just former Councillor John Burke, who was the cabinet member in Hackney, used to boast that he planted more trees than I think anyone since Queen Victoria or something. But he's an expert on getting street trees in. Now, they managed it in Hackney, really a huge number of trees really quickly. So I don't know if there was anything specific that they had, but he now works as a consultant for local authorities, and maybe he might be worth speaking to as a former councillor and doing it.
We've done that in the past in residents groups as well. People get together and help buy trees in their road. There's been quite a few in the city like that. Don't know if that's what John Burt did, but yeah.
Just on that again, the slides. I mean, it does mention about the cooling effect, health and well-being as well. But the focus on the slides were really to try and raise the awareness of the tree disease. Tree planting does happen, but that's almost a separate piece in itself, and it's something that we are doing, and we do obviously take into consideration as well.
I think one of the tricks that we miss is that we inoculate a lot of elm trees as well now. £40,000 a year we spend on inoculating trees. So we are working in two ways. We're not just cutting down. We are trying to save what we've got. Obviously, there's limited funding to inoculate the trees, so we have to inoculate what we'd say big big trees in very prominent places. But we do our best with what we got and carry on that way.
Just one more piece on that. Again, as Councillor Robbins mentioned, we have some of the best and rarest elms in the country, if not the world, and the inoculation is pioneering, certainly for this country. So what we're doing is leading the way on this for sure.
Careful with that, the anti-vaxxers will be on to you.
Yeah, and there's a thing I'll say that now Mike's brought up about the rarity of some of our elm trees. What blows my mind every time I think about it is I live in Portslade, in Benfield Way, Portslade. There's an elm tree which is the only mature specimen of that particular elm tree in the world, and it stands there. And I've driven past that every day, or walked past it, or rode past it, or whatever I've got, because I have to get home. And I've never known until very recently that it's the world's only elm, and I think it's got some ridiculous number like 9637241 or something. But it is the only one in the world. If anybody ever wants me to show them it, I will do.
Teresa, did you want to come back in?
I just wanted to say it wasn't in Brighton and Hove where the accidents happened. It was in other councils. To make that.
It was Southend.
Southend, and I think there's another one somewhere.
Thank you. I don't think there are any other questions, but I just want to say I'm glad Birgit's come back into the room, partly so I can make an announcement that apparently it was a private street sign that she fell over, not a council one. So Birgit wanted me to make that point, but also so that I could say thank you for both of your reports, and Birgit for your report, and please pass it on to Ian, that you didn't show us all the slides. You were right to assume that we've all looked at them very carefully, and very marvellous they were too. So don't feel like they weren't looked at and you needn't bother making them, because they were excellent. So thank you very much. So are we happy to note the report? Thank you. Okay, there is one more item to go, and it falls to me to introduce it. And I guarantee that this will be quick because, because we've already really made the decision as a committee in advance of this scoping report, and B, because we're all desperate to get out of here. So a deep dive into the heritage of our city was an idea that came up at the very first informal work planning meeting of this committee, which seems like a lifetime ago, like the start of this meeting. But it was always on the long list, but two things happened more recently that pushed it to the top of the pile. First was the realisation that the city's heritage strategy was last updated in 2015 and was due a refresh, and that we could help feed into that refresh and positively influence policy for the coming decade. And the second was a fortuitously well-timed Conservative notice of motion about lesser-known assets owned by the council, and like some of their more famous town centre structures, in danger of crumbling for lack of attention or funding, or both. We amended their noms slightly, but the basic idea of taking a more in-depth look at heritage assets and strategy was already on our radar, and we thought the idea was sound enough. So when we discussed that and other ideas for the next task and finish group at our last meeting, or at our meeting in July, we had a fantastically wide-ranging discussion that took in everything from obscure statues to quadrophenia, and from live music to trees, and to our LGBT community, all quite reasonably described as part of the cultural heritage of the city. But to be honest, I think while it was a lovely flight of fantasy, that conversation, it would be hard to cram all that into one task and finish group, or even fix on who it would be for and what the ask would be in terms of having a tangible influence on either the policy or the look and feel of the city. So I hope you don't mind that we've narrowed it down to produce the scoping report. It's still a huge area, and we might live to regret not narrowing it down further. And for anyone who might be interested in being involved in the task and finish group, which the numbers are given in the terms of reference, and will be discussed in the various groups, I imagine. You should probably take a look at the current heritage strategy document before you commit, because it is, it covers a lot of ground. It's quite a big report and quite a big strategy. And we're going to try and find some new ideas on top to inform the next one. So that's my pitch. Any questions? Well, I'm concerned, yes. So the asks of I'm just going to, again, take it as read. I haven't got any slides. I'm going to take it as read that you've looked at the scoping report and the terms of reference. And so the only asks are that if there aren't any detailed questions. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, just two slightly detailed questions. One is that there are neighbourhood strategies, and will this cover area strategies? What goes in those? But the other question is that it says anyone with an interest may be co-opted. Does that mean only us that are non-voting members, or anyone? Because I'm thinking there are heritage groups who may be interested in being on this. So is the membership open to a wider group of people, or is it literally only the 4 or 5 of us that are co-optees?
There's potential to co-opt someone from the wider community on there. I think the issue with heritage groups would be who you choose, and it might be better to have heritage groups giving evidence where we can have a kind of unlimited supply of them, rather than saying, well, we're going to have Hove Civic Society rather than the Regency Society as a member. I just think, practically speaking.
I can see that being an issue, but on the other hand, somebody who is a specialist on heritage might be better to, unless Julie would fill that role, it might be better to have them asking those questions rather than answering those questions. That I'm not giving you have to decide, obviously.
Well, I think the thing is, my experience of most of the heritage groups, like the Regency Society, Hove Civic Society and so on, they have been around for a very, very long time, and most of them are from a particular demographic, and they have very, very particular views about conservation. And conservation, as I learned at the knee of one of my favourite conservation officers many years ago, isn't about conserving things in aspect. It's all about how you bring about change and in an appropriate manner. And sometimes, like, for example, if you're doing a conversion in a basement of a listed house, and you need to knock a wall down to make a bigger space. Well, there's no problem with doing that as long as you leave evidence of where the wall was. So it's being able to read the building, and that's a very, very tiny example. But also, it's all about putting appropriate extensions onto listed buildings. And sometimes it's so much better to do something really modern and exciting rather than do a pastiche. And I've seen various examples of this in various European countries. Not so much in Brighton and Hove, because a lot of our listed buildings are actually residence, houses and stuff. So I think the fact that the Regency Society usually have a very strong anti-view on a lot of planning applications that we deal with on listed buildings. But what we need to do is to understand where they're coming from. And a lot of architects, I think we also need to invite some sort of architects who specialise in heritage works, because, and I can think of at least one person that I know of who would be suitable for that, to explain where they're coming from on the design side, because they, in Heritage England have various publications about appropriate extensions. So to say barns and things like that, and it's a very complicated subject, and not everybody agrees. But I think we need to get a wider view than just the amenities side. I can see, yeah. Sorry, but
can I comment, Chair? I actually just wanted to echo what Julie is saying. And also, the previous document was actually, I believe, called Conservation Strategy. And it has deliberately been retitled a heritage strategy so that we actually think about how it's used, ensuring that there is the historical record remains present, but that it is actually, we're ensuring that what we are, if it's conserved in the city in a way that it remains relevant to the city. So we are not simply trying to create museum pieces. And I think that's a really important distinction. So I would agree with Councillor Cattell. I think she is making a very, very valid point. But I also know there's a lot of expertise in the city. So I do also understand where Mark's coming from.
Can I just say that in terms of the nomenclature, oh God, I can't say it, you know what I mean, naming. When it was always, conservation officers always used to be called conservation officers, and it was conservation areas and listed buildings. But then I can't remember which iteration of the NPPF, the National Planning Policy framework, that's it, introduced the term of heritage assets. So that covers a lot. So conservation officers are now heritage officers, but it does actually give a much wider scope. For example, some of the things that we talked about there, and things that are unique to the city, music venues or all sorts of other things that we can probably draw into that heritage sort of bubble, if you like. Thank you.
Can I just say, I agree with your points about heritage, and I wanted to particularly use the example of what happened in Bristol with the Colston statue, where the heritage was preserved of the statue with a bad record of what it was commemorating, but the council, rather than just putting it back, made it into a proper heritage asset and explaining the history of racism and slavery in Bristol, using that as a story. That's heritage. Conservation would have been just literally putting it back. So I think absolutely agree that it's not just purely keeping things as they are. But as Birgit said, there are lots of people with lots of very detailed experience. And yes, we can ask them questions, but sometimes having them asking the questions might be better, because they will. One of the things I know is that we don't know what questions to ask. So that's my only concern, really.
I look forward to it. And yes, I'll put my hand up again. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Liz. Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I'm new to this. For some reason, I think I might have missed the end of July OSC. So when I read areas to investigate, I did get rather confused by the bullets, the information in the bullet points, in particular, how private ownership, council-owned heritage assets, and lack of enforcement powers relates to conservation areas and conflict with modernisation. And just in terms of the scale of development, what is this supposed to address? I've concluded that it probably is addressing small scale developments and not larger scale. Is that right? Or is it, are we talking about modifications, extensions, that kind of thing? Or are we talking about possibly new development that could be separate? A new development in the conservation area. Sorry.
I think that references to individual residential properties and people replacing windows and things like that. It's not to new developments.
Yeah. Okay. So, I suppose I just found that term, conflict with modernisation. I didn't actually understand the context for it. I found that quite sort of, because what I thought you meant was, or thought that was meant was appropriate design for new development. Do you know what I mean? So in harmony, and they function together sustainably.
I think the specific conversation at the July meeting where that came from was more boring than that, and it was about people wanting to replace their windows with UVPC and not being allowed to because they were sitting in an area where it's a conservation area, and it was that kind of how do we balance people's understandable desire to modernise their property and to make their property more ecologically sound with the need to preserve the aspects of a conservation area.
Okay, I mean, just to be perhaps a bit more positive about it, maybe we could just change that wording to conservation areas and modernising properties or something like that. So the other thing I wanted to say was that I think a really important thing to do for the group is to start with the governance of the project in terms of the community and council inputs. And then I think once we've got governance in place and we know how the body's working and then what it's going to address, that the whole discussion will evolve. But I found this paper rather lacking in terms of addressing the requirement for governance. I mean, I think we're touching on it in our discussion about which groups contribute.
In part, this is an officer scoping paper, but the task and finish group will be member-led. So as officers, I don't want to be sort of suggesting or leading members. It's up to the task and finish group to determine their governance and who they want to talk to and who they want as a co-opted member or witness. So I think officer scoping papers are always a bit lacking because we're nervous about saying, oh yeah, members, maybe you should go this way. But the first thing we'll do with the task and finish group is to sit down with the group members and work out what it is they want, when they want to hear people, who they want to hear, and so on.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. So just to add to Councillor Cattell's comments about, which kind of experts we would like to come in, I agree we need architects and planners and heritage consultants, and I think there are probably lots of suitably qualified people within Brighton and Hove, but also perhaps we could get other people outside Brighton and Hove if they're willing to contribute, because I'm assuming this will have to be next to voluntary, if not entirely voluntary.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of scope to, and I think it's mentioned in the report, to bring in best practice from other councils, for example, like we did on the short-term Let's group, and to find out what other people are doing, because, the big problems with all kinds of heritage is lack of funding these days. And we all know about the big ticket items like Madeira Terraces, that we finally got some money to do the first tranche, and it's taken us years, but we still don't know where the money might come from to repair or rebuild all of the rest that are still crumbling after that, so, and there just isn't, whether it's privately owned or publicly owned, there just isn't funding out there, or it's quite hard to draw on it, what there is. So it's, it's addressing all of that as well. So yes, it's looking for new ideas, best practice from other areas, anywhere we can think of where there might be a great idea or some expertise, really. So,
yeah, I just want to come back and add to that I think one of the problems in Brighton and Hove is that suppliers are very confused about what kind of advice they should be giving to residents who want to contract with them for supply of services. And so the energy and sustainability side with heritage is still in a cloud to them. And I know that there's been a recent update to the council website about energy advice, but I think we need to make it stronger, and perhaps, what it's all leading to is a specific kind of design manual, or not design manual, but a manual to help guide people through all the different processes and what they need to know, so they know actually how to describe the project to contractors in the proper way, and they know how to be more contractually secure with that information.
Councillor Window.
Thank you.
I wanted to suggest that we might take a more expansive picture of what this might mean and how people might work together, because what we're losing is a sense of belonging in the city, and we need to bring that feeling back, that people have some sort of ownership of what the city means to them. And that includes recognising and respecting the past, but also looking and moving at what the future might look like and what the city needs to be in the next 10, 20 years. it's not about making rules about it. It's about opening up that discussion about where the people actually fit within that shape and what they actually see the city. Why did they come to live here? What does it mean to them? And how important is that to respect our history as well as understanding what our cultural heritage is? So I think it's a much more expansive thing than the shape of a window or something like that. It's actually about people's feeling about the city and how important that is. And we should respect that and enhance that and have more people to have a kind of a say in what that actually means.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how that fits in to the exact remit of this group, but I completely agree with you, the point you're making about the reasons that people are here and getting to the heart of that. But I'm not quite sure where it fits into protecting our heritage and the discussion about the strategy for conservation and heritage myself.
Can I just answer that? Actually, if people don't care and they don't feel they belong, they're not going to input to that new strategy that heritage, respect for heritage actually requires and stops things from being destroyed. It actually protects them. And I think that's really important about the relationship between the people and the city itself.
Important to note, I think, as well, that whilst we'll be feeding into the heritage strategy with any ideas that we come up with, and the heritage strategy timescale has been delayed so that we can do that with this working group, that once they've got their heritage draft strategy, it will be going out to public consultation. So obviously we'll be feeding into what will eventually be going out to public consultation, but there's nothing to stop us trying to bring as many resident voices into this working group as possible as well. You know, because the original notice of motion that we took on board in setting this as our next task and finish group subject was specifically mentioning several heritage assets that are in Patcham that nobody's ever heard of, really, you know, unless they happen to live in Patcham. And that's, you know, that's why it's important. Yeah. You know, so yes, there's nothing to stop us bringing in residents as well to this.
Sorry, just a quick minute. I just want to say there's actually lots of good discussion about the treatment of heritage in the Planning Inspectorate reports on small scale developments that might be worth, you know, when we come to it, asking officers just to review and summarise some of those good examples and then maybe do that with some photographs or something.
Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, well, if that's all points made, then we are asked to sign off on establishing this task and finish group, to scrutinise the issue of preserving heritage assets in the city. Do you agree? Thank you. And we are also asked to agree the terms of reference, membership and duration of the task and finish group as set out in Appendix 2. Do you agree? Thank you. I will now call the meeting to a close. Only 45 minutes after we wanted, but, you know, I did think at one point we might still be here.